Hello, everybody! If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, as he has been for all 5 years of AOS minus the shows he's missed, it's Tom. What's up, buddy?
I've been here for most of them.
Most of them is a correct statement.
Yeah,
Just not all of them. Also joining us this week, the man who was with us at the start of it all, the first post-AOS launch show where we did Age of Sigmar, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Mr. Doom and Darkness. Buddy, how you doing tonight, sir?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me back.
Hey, we couldn't be more excited to have you back on the show. It would be absolutely hilarious if this had been the next time you were on the show. Like, we've had you on in between. But it'd be really funny. So, what have you been up to for the last 5 years?
Yeah.
But no, obviously, Doom, you were our first post-launch guest. And so I thought, what better way to celebrate than to have Doom back on to do this entire 5-year journey with us. And that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to go through the 5-year history of Age of Sigmar and talk about all of it. But first, new stuff. New stuff is first.
Rumor engine.
It's up on the screen. One other quick note I want to say. Doom, say something real quick so the camera goes back to you.
Righto. Hello, everyone.
There we go.
Can you see me?
I can. Yeah, you're fine. I just wanted it to go off Tom for a second to say one of the fascinating things about watching you on camera, Doom, because I went back and I was watching you from the show from 5 years ago, is the shelves behind you filling up with armies and figures, like the journey that those shelves have gone on. So I just thought it was funny to look at them now today and see all of the different armies and figs that are on them compared to back then.
Yeah, well, once upon a time I used to be like Doug and just recycle my armies endlessly, but I've put that side of me to bed, and now I'm officially a collector and hoarder. So I've joined your ranks.
Welcome.
Nice. Welcome to the club.
Welcome. Yes, absolutely. It's good to be here. All right, so Rumor Engine. Yeah, it's up on the screen. It's a stealthy little gloved, elvish fingered hand type of thing holding a sharp blade. So that Doc warband, right?
Doom, what do you think?
Sure, I'll go with your pick, Tom.
I think it's Drukari.
Sure.
I think it's 40k. I don't think it's actually. I don't think it's a daughter's.
The best way to get Tom to not call that it's an elf, by the way,
is it to actually be an elf?
It's for it to actually be an elf. Tom will make anything into an AOS elf, except it's actually like just a direct picture of an elf. He'd be like, "Nah, it's a trick. It's not an elf."
I mean, what I will say is this. Okay. So the blade has the shape of like one of the witch elf blades, like the exterior blades, but the hole in the middle of the blade is reminiscent of Drukari.
Well, I think the tassel or the ribbon that's coming off it is extremely AOS. I've painted a dozen of those.
Yeah.
It's just the gloved hand or the hand that is a little bit different to what I'm used to seeing. So that's the only thing that puts me off. Otherwise, I'd say it's elf all day long.
Yeah, like I'm calling Dark Eldar. Like Drukari is what they're called, maybe. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, it's I don't think it's AOS. I actually think it's 40k.
All right. Fair enough. I mean, here's what I'll say. How do I want to phrase this? There are still 7 unreleased figures from that Dark Elf band, and chances are a lot of them are going to be male, and that feels like a more male hand.
Sure. I don't disagree.
They tend to overpronounce knuckles on male hands and underpronounce them on female hands, like the GW sculptors. Yep. So sure, I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't be a dark elf, but I'm saying there are 7 figures we haven't seen in that warband at least, and so there you go.
Well, it's not an ogre, so basically it's just food.
That's a fair point. I agree with that. All right, cool. We have some other stuff happening. We have big news. Big news.
I mean, it's kind of big news.
Oh, it's big news. You shut your face.
General's Handbook goes on pre-order next Saturday.
That it does.
Who saw that happening? I did not.
GHB 2020 coming out. Going on pre-order this Saturday. Coming out on the 11th. And I have a thing here. I just brought the table of contents up on the screen for everybody.
Oh, yeah. Well,
because they did release the table of contents.
Yep.
Did you watch the video?
I did not.
Okay, Doom, did you watch the related video where they all talked about what they did?
I saw the photo.
So I watched about half of it. I saw Jervis say open play. I was like, cool, that's good. And then I saw Sam talking about narrative. I was like, sweet, hitting a strong point. And then I saw, I think he's Mr. Aguila, doing the match play. And he was heavily involved in the Slaves to Darkness book, which I love. And so I actually have a lot of confidence about the match play section of this book based off his perceived heavy involvement.
Sure. No, you're absolutely right. That was the alignment. I did think it was funny that they gave the newest guy in the studio the match play section.
Yeah.
Like, that's no offense to him. I agree with you. I think the Slaves to Darkness book, barring Marauders, is actually one of the best books they've released in a long time. Like, I think Slaves to Darkness is a nearly perfect book. Right. Marauders are way out of bounds, but that's okay. Other than that, it's a great book.
And they're terrible models too, which is the best part.
I do love the recent trend of making old bad models ridiculously good. But let's get into this for a little bit. Yeah. So open play games, Jervis talked a little bit about how they're doing all the sky battle stuff. It's kind of cool. I don't care that it's really open play because I think most of it is just about having literally a fight one-on-one between two flying monsters.
Yeah.
So I don't think you actually need points for that. Like, just you take your... Go ahead.
Well, I'd say they did it in like 3 months of magazines, White Dwarfs back to back.
Yeah.
It was I think December through February had all that content. And so like I suspect it'll be just a refined version of what that was, which I'm excited about. Like I was actually buying those magazines for that mini game. So I'm excited about this.
Yeah, and clearly they've got both larger battles as well as sort of the one-on-one because they have the sky battle duels and then the encounters. And I think that's a fun little distraction. Neat. You can take your Mega Boss and Maw Crusher and go against a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon. And it's clearly its own little system, and you can have a little fight. And, again, perfect. That's the perfect type of thing for open play. Fun. Yep. What that makes me think is that's the kind of thing either of you could do with your kids.
Yes. That's exactly right. Like, open play for me is playing with my kids.
Sure.
And so I love that change. Like, I love that. Let me say it this way. I love that additional content. Like, I don't play scenarios with the kids. I play open play cards.
Sure. Plus, it seems to me like little kids would be like, yeah, I take my big monster and go and make the noises and stuff. Maybe I have a misperception of small children.
I mean, that is a really weird, like, corner case of kids, but I will say that my son does just want to play as Maw Crusher and as Star Drake. Like, that's all.
Same. Like if I tell my son to grab something off the shelf, he just wants to grab like a Bloodthirster and the Maw Crusher and not get 1,000 points or 2,000 points.
Yeah.
So it gets too hard as soon as you just got to pick that many guys. But grab some big guys, grab Thanquol, even though he doesn't fly, and away you go.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, Skaven magic is impressive. It can do many things. Probably even make rats fly. Truly, once we get the airborne technology solved, Skaven will be a whole new force. It's the one thing we've been lacking. I remember back in 5th edition when I converted my Skaven Warlord on a Manticore because you could buy monsters from the general monster group, and it was my favorite time ever, and then they took that away from me. And I still miss it. 20 years later, I still miss my flying Skaven Warlord. Give me him back.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's an idea there for GHB 2021.
2021, bring it back.
Yeah, open play. Let's go.
The random monster collections where you could just have monsters you add into any army. Yes, I agree. Mm-hmm. All right, so then narrative play. I mean, they've got a bunch of different stuff, but I think what we're going to drive into is let's talk about the Anvil of Apotheosis. That's obviously going to be the big point of discussion. Mm-hmm. The Hero Maker.
Yep.
Right? Okay. So, Hero Maker. Obviously, it's not a match play thing. This does feel like the kind of thing, though, that could be generated within points. Like, I understand they don't want to because a lot of match play people would probably hate it, but it does feel like the kind of thing that you could easily point out. Like when I hear something like this, I think of Battletech, and I used to play Battletech, and you could build your own mechs, and we could fight those against each other, and it was still fair. So it seems like there would be a way to do this too. I don't know. Just a thought. I don't know. Making heroes seems cool. Gentlemen, thoughts?
Seems like a great idea that could have been even designed for match play, and then before it went to print, they said, you know what, let's just test this in narrative first, and then see how we go for 2021.
Yeah, so they pulled the opposite of meeting engagements, where they started with something that very well could have been narrative, and then but pulled it from match. Sure.
I think there's a bunch of problems there. Like once you start to you build in a mechanic to create your own heroes and match play point it, then you're releasing your algorithm for point generation in one sense as well, because it's going to be very similar to that.
Sure.
And then as well, you want to make sure that what you're releasing there has been tested robustly. Otherwise, there's going to be real potential for problems and things that have been missed. So I think, and if we want to move away from soup books, right, where we're just putting whatever we want into whatever army. So that's sort of like an addition of soup. It's like adding your carrot into your spaghetti or something. I don't know. So I can see like multiple different reasons why it's got good potential for match play, but perhaps why it's not there now.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm okay with it. I mean, the biggest thing that I'm excited about as we move into talk about match play a little bit, but it connects the two. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I want to say, and this also connects the two, and it's a really sad move for me. Was that Mercs seem like they're gone?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
And like I have like a bunch of models converted over, so
okay,
that's sad. But you know, like that's what happens.
Yeah. Okay. It's not a thing I miss. It's really not like
fine. But like for me, like I really like the idea, and it actually pushed my story in a really interesting way for my dwarf army. And so I build up a couple units, converted a bunch of stuff, and it was fun. And so now I have to like use those as something else. But yeah.
Sure. Look, here's my issue. I don't have any issue with mercenaries as a concept. My issue is with that implementation of mercenaries felt so far off. Like, you look at the mercenaries that were in there and what they selected, and it was a bunch of units that then part of that stuff they ended up retiring 5 minutes later.
Yeah.
It just felt like not the correct implementation of mercenaries. Like, if you're going to do that, have some kind of look at your range, decide who's mercenary on like a table, like which we're about to talk about, of people who can kind of, fractiously align with anyone for coin, right? And then make some rules to allow them to be able to go over there in a sort of controlled way. I liked the idea, the essence of what they were doing of having these mercenary companies, because it called back to the Dogs of War. It was just they need to put it into a perma product if that's what they're going to do.
Right. Yep. Which they did, kind of.
Well, I mean, the GHB, they put it into the
actually, you know what? I take that back. I take that back. No, my army's fine, because technically I own Malign, or not. I own
Forbidden
the one magic one, and you can technically do Fire Slayer and FEC still.
Correct. Those two were in the perma product. Yes, of Forbidden Power. It was the rest of the mercenary companies that they kept in here.
Yes. Yeah. Rather than the yearly product. Those two companies sit in the second edition product. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. So. Nope, totally fair. The other thing I'll say that'll transition us over is clearly there is a lot of multiplayer focus in this. I'm excited. That was my number one ask. If you went back to the show, I said, number one thing I want to see, much more multiplayer support. Most of my games are multiplayer. I love multiplayer AOS. I know that probably makes me weird, but whether it's 3-player or 4-player, I think it's the best way to play AOS. If you want to stop caring about balance and start having fun, okay, start playing 3-player games of AOS. It will dramatically change the way you play AOS. Your games will instantly, I guarantee, a minimum 15 to 25% fun increase. That is the Vince guarantee right there.
I mean, I will agree that I love multiplayer games, and it dramatically changes the shape of how things work and what's good. And
Yep. I agree. Outside of match play, just straight up Warhammer, multiplayer games is the other most common way that I play Age of Sigmar, and normally 2 versus 2. And it actually works. 2 versus 2 already works pretty well within the existing rule set. Right. But just adding some confines around that, I think is excellent. And I want to see him sort of develop it, because I also think that 2 versus 2 as a tournament format is excellent, like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So I want to see much more of that.
By far my favorite tournament format. I enjoy 2v2 tournaments. Don't get me wrong, I love a good standard match play tournament. You go there 1v1, you have some games, you have 5 great games. I've enjoyed all those tournaments I go to. But legit, real talk, I enjoy team tournaments just a lot more. it's more fun to have somebody next to you on your side of the table, right? It's just a good time.
You're welcome, Vince.
Yeah, and unfortunately for me, that's usually Tom. But yes, for everybody else, it's probably a good time.
We'll see.
All right, so battle plans. We got some stuff. We got the ones, but we've got some new battle plans. Yep. Blade's Edge enforcing the hand. Right. Yep. So getting rid of the duel, the hero. Yep. Why can't I think of the name?
Yep. Duality of Death.
Thank you. Duality of Death. Yes. All I could conjure in my head was duel and getting rid of relocation orb. With these two.
Thank you.
Now, all right. So, what did you? So, let's talk about duality of death and relocation orb. Tom, happy or sad to see these scenarios go?
Love it. Love it. Get that out of here.
You didn't like either of them?
No. Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Like it's skewed list building for some armies, like way too sharply. And relocation orb, I think, like anytime you have really, really random, like, how do I want to say this? When you have in like competitive events, having relocation orb in there, anything that has like objectives that have moving point values, it adds an element of randomness that if you really want like competitive match play, I don't think should be there. Now, I'm more okay with it if you have like a 4-person like team game, if you have the objective moving places. When there's 4 people, but when there's 2, I don't.
All right, Doom, your take on these 2 being gone?
Happy with Duality of Death going, but personally I loved Relocation Orb. The principle of a moving objective I actually love. It's the opposite to Tom, and but I'm perfectly happy to lose a game at a tournament based off a randomly bouncing objective, because it's fun chasing an objective with Stonehorns, just like driving across the board chasing after that thing. So I would like to see a scenario like that remain, and if there was a better way that they could implement it, I don't know what that is, then sure, I'd be happy with that. But in the general principle, I thought it was really, really fun. But I certainly see why a lot of people didn't like it. But for me, it's all good. It makes for a really fun game. It's like the priority roll. You don't know what's going to happen, right? Sure. And that's one of the best things about Age of Sigmar. So let's add 2 or 3 of those in, and holy moly, we've got a wild game on our hands.
Totally with you. 100% with you, Doom. Like, I love those scenarios for that reason. Or relocation specifically for that reason. Duality was what Duality was. I actually liked Duality less since they changed its objective taking rules in 2019. I actually found it to be less compelling. I like Places of Arcane Power better post 2019.
It was just really easy for like Fire Slayers to just push 2 blocks of Hearthguard onto objectives.
Correct. Once they ruined the scenario by allowing Battle Line.
Yeah.
That ruined it. It should have stayed Heroes. That was what was cool about it. It was neat. Now that they ruined it, I'm fine with getting rid of it, is my honest answer.
Right.
I'm interested to see what these new ones are. I have a feeling one of these is just going to be Relocation Orb, the new version, by the by. Where
a more controlled version, probably.
Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the Blade's Edge or something like that was like a line through the middle of the board that the thing slides back and forth on instead of going loopy-loop, right? Yeah. Or something like that. Right. Who knows? We'll see, I suppose, very soon. Sad to still see total commitment there, but I'll be happy if they completely get rid of the normal way total commitment works and have it be something completely different and stop just ruining 2 armies, 3 armies in the game for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
So that's fine. And then we have a bunch of stuff about meeting engagements. So that's here to stay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Some people like it. I'm happy for those people. Moving on.
Well, I'll just say now, in defense of meeting engagement, like we knew this was coming because Games Workshop released their podcast, and I think it was, and when Jervis was getting interviewed, he was talking a lot about what they're sort of working on, their sort of processes, and he spoke heavily about meeting engagements and justified some of the things from the last edition of it, having the base starting off the edge and things like that. And so his focus on meeting engagements in that interview told me that this was going to be a big part of this GHB. And just like, to be fair, I've never had a single game of meeting engagements, and I probably won't play it in the future, but I do know people that have, and they've really enjoyed it. I know other people don't enjoy it, but I do know quite a few people that have really enjoyed it. So I won't rag on it because I haven't played it, but I probably won't play it, if that makes sense.
I have, and I didn't enjoy it.
Right. There you go.
Also fair. My answer is it's not for me, but I'm glad it's for someone. And honestly, I don't care. In the end, it's like 12 pages of this book. And if 12 pages of this book makes a bunch of people super happy, then okay, sure. That's a worthwhile use of 12 pages. Not everything in the book needs to be for me. That's the answer, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Especially since, again... Oh, go ahead, dude.
I would say, though, that, we have a 1,000-point system, which works quite well, really. Everything is scaled down, and you have to try and, am I going to go into this battle without my leg or my arm? That's the decision you have to make. And so I probably would have been happier with meeting engagements and a 1,000-point system being merged in some way, and so that it's less than meeting engagements, but a little bit more than the 1,000-point system we have at the moment. I probably would have preferred that than two parallel 1,000-point systems as such, but I mean, who knows?
No, yeah, I hear you.
Or do something with the 1,500-point mark, like mess around in that space is what I would say.
Yep. But as I said, I can't complain because we do get a bunch more coalition stuff in here, and so that's where you get the pitched battle coalition of death, and of course the coalition matrix, as mentioned, which I will now bring up. Babow! It's very tiny, which everybody can't, probably they're not gonna be able to see, but the point is that here, I'll tell you what, I'll move it over here real quick just for everybody, and we'll make it real big. We'll go big. There we go. So, this is the big matrix that shows you how you can align with everybody. It is funny that, of course, all the Chaos people have no coalition possible with a whole bunch of forces. Like, they're not friendly with very many people, which I enjoy. But I do also enjoy that the Fire Slayers get a little mention of the fact they'll work for anyone by having the desperate coalition with everybody in Chaos except Skaven. Skaven being clearly the least friendly people because they have the most skulls. And then even with the rest of Chaos, most of the rest of Chaos, they're all happy to work together for the most part, exempting the sort of hard enemies. Skaven are just, even at best, they have like a fractious coalition with the rest of Chaos. I do like that admission that everybody hates the Skaven and they aren't good friends to anybody. So I enjoy that. And of course, listing out the Sons of Behemoth on here and showing that they're fractious with everybody. There's nobody they can't hang out with, which I think is pretty cool.
The other thing that I picked up or that I thought was really interesting about the GHB was it seems the one clip that they showed seems to point to the fact that we may be losing realm artifacts in matched play.
Well, we're gonna get to that in just a second. We're gonna talk about that in just a moment. I promise. The last thing I want to mention here is the Lumineth Realm Lords also show up in here. We've seen their ally list obviously because the book is out, and we know that it's just IDK, which is hilarious to me because in here they have a very happy Battleforged coalition with Stormcast Eternals and Daughters of Cain and Sylvaneth, and they have a desperate coalition. We can barely stand you with IDK. So
right, so I could see one of two possibilities happening. One, the GHB changes their allies list.
Sure.
Or two, like I think probably what happened was there was a last minute change with Lumineth. That I think they I don't know if they found something in playtesting or something, but I suspect that because there's no lore in the book regarding IDK, zero lore, the relationship between Lumineth and IDK, and tension, none of it is in there, and so I think it's just really interesting that they're the only allies without that. So it seems like there was some disconnect between that allies list and the rest of the book.
Sure.
Yep, I would have thought IDK would have been pretty upset about Lumineth, and they kind of IDK are like the unloved second child. So I think they'd have a bit of a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So there we go. That's that interesting little screen there. Okay, let's make this small again. So I'm interested in all these coalition rules and what that boils down to. It should be a lot of fun to check that out. Okay. So, And then what you mentioned, Tom, is where we're going next. Let's go back to the this, which is the Realm of Battle Rules. 6 pages, 102 to 108. And then we've also got some match play auxiliary objectives, so built-in secondaries. Very interested to see how that's going to work. Is it just going to be a reprint of the secondaries? Are we getting something new? We'll find out. But Realm of Battle Rules. We got Akshi and Shimon or something, kind of spoiled out there in the article. Seems like it's just basically, and what was said was when you determine when you roll, and whoever goes first, they also get to choose the realm, and then all that stuff gets set, and it generates the spell, and the artifact, and the command ability, and all of this, which doesn't necessarily make sense. So, here's the question. Why do we think realm artifacts are going away?
Well, could I just maybe unpack why I think maybe they aren't?
I absolutely. I want to know where this came from.
So if I remember correctly, and I haven't even checked, but the Realm of Battle rules, like for what realm you are in the core rule book, and then all the artifacts are in the Malign Sorcery, right? Mm-hmm. And so the core rules for the realms had basically the same thing that we see in the new GHB, except there were multiple different command traits or whatever it is. You'd have to roll them up, multiple different spells, and it was a bit more excessive than you needed. And then separate to that, almost completely separate to that, was Malign Portents and Malign Sorcery with all of the different artifacts. So based off what I see at the moment, it seems like these are just the new realm rules for how you apply what realm you're in. And then Malign Sorcery is an independent bolt-on that you then use to pick all your artifacts and things like that. And so unless there's something there that says, Malign Sorcery is going away, I don't see anything that says they're going away. But I could be completely wrong in my understanding of that sort of layout.
Let me find the... so there was an image that leaked that was like a screen capture.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes, from the video.
Say what?
It's from the video.
It was from the video. Yeah, I'm trying to find the image real quick. I'll find it. And basically it said if you play in, like the fine text said, if you play in a realm, like you're aligned, you must take this item. And it only lists one item. Mm-hmm. And so like it seems like it is a lot more... if you decide your army is from a specific mortal realm and wish to make one of your artifacts of power a realm artifact, you must pick the realm artifact for your chosen mortal realm from the following pages instead of using an artifact from Malign Sorcery.
Right.
That is cool. That is explicit text.
Yeah.
After picking a battle plan, you must pick a mortal realm, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So what that says to me is that you don't use, in match play, you don't use the artifacts anymore. You have to use whatever the one artifact they give you for your realm.
Yeah, I did not see that additional text at the top. It's interesting. That's an interesting place to make a real hard pivot like that. That's a big change away from that stuff, especially since all of this was reprinted in the gaming book too. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
I'm going to pull that up real quick just so you guys can see.
Yes, Haywo mentioned it in the chat as well.
Okay, there we go. This is going to be, I apologize for how, because this was a screen capture of the screen capture, it's going to be foggy, but there's the text.
That is very zoomed in, Tom. If you decide, I got to fuzz my eyes.
No. I mean, I'll take your word for it, Tom.
So can you read that now?
I can, yes. If you decide that your army is from a specific mortal realm and wish to make one of your artifacts a power realm artifact, you must pick the realm artifact for your chosen mortal realm from the following pages instead of using an artifact from Malign Sorcery. Yeah, that's just a fascinating change to make here, right?
Yep.
And that's a heck of a pivot. Now, what I'll say is, so let's just have a talk about this. Okay, great. So, because I've seen some people in the comments already heralding excitement at the getting rid of the
ethereal amulet. Don't you touch my ethereal amulet.
Well, yeah, getting rid of the Malign Sorcery artifacts. And my honest answer is,
ogres.
Why?
Crunch horn's got a crunch.
Why are we excited about these going away? Let's have this discussion here. Okay? I'm not. I'm very unexcited about them going away. I've never had a problem with them ever. And I saw a discussion about this happen, I think, on Rob's show, where the person had said, well, they're kind of a win more thing because they help armies that are already up at the top and have really good stuff have more better stuff. I disagree. Armies that have great stuff don't take these things.
That's right. Yep.
Because they have great artifact lists already. You know, when I'm playing an army that has like incredible things, like if I'm playing a Legion of Chaos Ascendant, I don't need to worry about that. I'm taking the fourfold blade of I mortal wound you off the table because it's incredible. If I'm playing my Seraphon, I've got items coming out the yang that I'd rather take than anything out of there. I don't need to touch these, right?
Yep.
And so on and so forth. Like same with Tzeentch, same with a bunch of armies. Where these help is frankly with the older armies that don't have good artifacts.
Well, not even older armies, but even just more tribes.
Yeah, sure. Lots of armies that have either heroes that just don't have access because things like Maw Tribes where they said, this is the artifact list for this guy, and this is the artifact list for this type of hero, and sometimes they just left out heroes. And like Destruction, this is true all over the place. Ogres, Oryx, and Goblins all have this situation where they split up the artifacts, right? Into very specific things. Like your Butchers can have this, you know, and your Hunters can have this and whatever. When you look at like Oryx, your War Chanters don't even have an artifact list they can pick from. That's not a thing. It doesn't exist. 0 artifacts they can take. Right? Same with like Gits. There are characters in the Gits army that just don't have artifacts. They just can't take them. So like I guess the only thing my Fungoid Cave Shaman can get, or whichever one it is that doesn't have an artifact. Don't at me. I don't play the Gits, but I know there's some Goblin guy that can get it. I guess the only thing he can get is a sword that lets him get 2 hits on a 6 if we're in the Realm of Fire. Oh well, Hachidu. Thank goodness for that. That's exactly what I wanted my dude to have. Right?
Yeah, once you take this away, nothing that is already at the top of the meta gets any worse in any way. And the only armies that get worse are people that are relying on, ethereal vampire lords on zombie dragons, ethereal stonehorns, swords of judgments for a cool little assassination hero, Aether Quartz brooch. And so when I think about all of the different armies that use those artifacts, you take it away from those. They're already in the bottom of the fat middle anyway, so they only get worse. So I don't mind the general principle of reverting the artifacts down to pretty much a small selection or what's in the army book. I think that's cool for flavor and keeping things within their own book. But overall, it's just sort of punishing the have-nots, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. Where it feels like to me the right answer would have been, oh, these are good artifacts. Like, yes, okay. So you say, maybe your answer is, and I hear this all the time, I've redressed this dumb comment like 50 times on this show, but I'll do it 51 times. Well, the list is too big. And it's a bunch of stuff that no one takes. First of all, who cares? That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's a good thing. That's a feature, not a bug. Because if there's only 8 artifacts out of that list that are any good, they instantly enter the consciousness. Everybody knows about them. You can know about them. I know all 8 of the good artifacts. I don't know 84 artifacts that are in that book, but I know the 8 good ones. And I can keep those off the top of my head. Okay? Not a bug, a feature. But it still allows a bunch of fluff for everybody else who wants a cool, fun thing. Or is corner shooting with a neat rule. Which I've done a couple times where I've dug into that list and found a neat, like, oh, this is a cool little edge case combo here for this one particular hero, right? It's not in the top 8, but this would be an awesome setup for the Smoldering Helm. Cool, I've got a guy who can get like +3 to his save, and he can go charge into people and do a neat Smoldering Helm trick. Now all that's gone. All that's gone, right? But even if you were to assume that's incorrect, the right answer would be take that list of 84 if you think that's unwieldy and break it down to like 16 and rewrite the ones that are like that you feel are out of bounds somehow. So if Aether Quartz is a problem, which I don't necessarily think it is. I think it's fine, whatever. But if Aether Quartz is a problem, fine, slightly fix it, right? Make it on a 6, and then no one takes it, or whatever. Or, like there are things you could do here, okay? Or you could say, the first time in a round you spend a command point, you may roll a die. On a 4-up, you get the command point back the first time in a battle round. So you can only get 1 per turn. Neat, but it's a 50% chance. Great, that's still pretty cool, right? So like the point is these things could have fixes. We could keep the Thermal Rider cloak. And yes, you're absolutely right. Somebody just said in the comments, and you bet I'm pissed because I built a flying steam tank with a Thermal Rider cloak on him It's the most exciting thing. I've waited so long to have a cool steam tank character. This has been my dream forever. That's what made me want to build this army. Was realizing that I could have a character who could take an artifact and have a flying steam tank. It was the coolest thing in the world. Okay? And you're just gonna take that away from me? Just sight unseen, hey, who cares?
I mean, magic. Maybe there's a magic carpet in one of the other realm rules, and you can put your steam tank on the carpet, and it'll be all right. That's the only reserve I've got. Is I'm sort of saying, well, let's just wait and see a little bit, because they might just build that Grith Feather Charm, that Ethereal Amulet, or something like that into some of the realms. Maybe lesser versions of those, but still fill a similar role. So, and of course, maybe there's Malign Sorcery or Malign Portents 2.0 that's going to be released as well, and we get a whole new list. So. It's a big inconvenience for me. My Ethereal Stonehorn is gone. He was such a critical part of my army, and to perform, there's no other thing in that army that performs the same role, and I need a tank, and so I'm going to have to try to swap him out for a suboptimal Frostlord on Thunder Tusk, which just can do that. It's a poor man's version, but that's just the world I guess I'm going to have to live in. So I'll wait and see. It's not the end of the world for me, but it's definitely not optimal.
No, I call it an all-around negative move. And by the by, Doom, I can't wait and see what they have in other realms. Cities' armies are locked to a specific realm. So all I can get is the dumb fire sword. That's the only choice I have, is dumb fire sword.
At least that meme that says, drive me closer so I can hit them with my sword is more relevant then.
Absolutely. So, now, that being said, and again, so your thing aside, right? Yes, the cities being locked means all cities' armies who already have a very limited magical item selection, by the by, most of the cities only have 3 magic items, and let's be honest, they're not great in most cases, okay? The saving grace was you could almost always go to a Malign Sorcery artifact, because there was plenty of good ones that aligned with what the cities wanted to do. Well, suck it on that, because now not only do you at least yes, you were realm locked, you could only go to Akshi or you could only go to Gairan, but at least you had some choice in there, right? But nope. Now you just have 4 artifacts for your city instead of 3. Well. Congratulations. Super cool. So again, we don't know any of this for sure yet. This is all based on that little snippet of text and whatever. But I'll tell you right now what my instinct is. My instinct is to say, no thank you. Look, we'll know for sure when we get the book in a couple weeks, and I do that. But last year they came out with a bunch of terrain rules, and we as a community all got together and said, no thank you. We would like to not use these, and nobody did. So, if this is that bad, we could just do the same thing again. If the realm rules are such as that these just don't work in actual match play, I'm okay with just saying, you know what the right answer is here? To ignore that and continue on. And have them fix it. There you go. That's my answer. So, selfish, certainly, but I don't like it. There you go. So, fix it. Okay. I am interested to see what the secondary objectives are. So, there you go. Okay, cool. Anything else we want to say about GHB 2020?
I hope it's not like GHB 2019. That's all I can say.
Yes, that's been another thing. I've seen many people talk about on various shows this week, talk about GHB 2019. It was great. We loved it. And I'm like, what?
I've got PTSD from that book.
I think these people don't remember exactly how the general anger in the community when GHB 2019 dropped, and how upset we all were at the reprinting of all the allegiance abilities, nothing changing. The only bright point in 2019 was they did fix the battle plans really well. Most of the new battle plans were really nice. The match play battle plans came out well. That was a bright spot.
Yep, Iron Jaw's got an allegiance ability that was excellent, and then got a book which replaced it straight away, but more tribes were just as deadly as ever.
Just as deadly as ever. That's right. I mean, yeah, I didn't forget how bad GHB 2019 was. It was bad.
It was really bad.
let's hope for better this time. On the bright side,
yeah.
Even if they do screw the entire malign sorcery artifacts out and ruin all of that, it'll still be better than GHB 2019.
Yeah. I mean, in hindsight, we know now that they had such a tough schedule and were working on so many different books and had an intense release schedule ahead of them. So we know that in hindsight, and so probably not as much went into it as we would have liked. But at the time, it was a doozy.
Indeed. Yeah. Indeed. All right. So cool. I think that's so GHB. We'll know more soon. Pre-order this Saturday. New book. Hopefully, man will read book. We'll see what happens. Tom, I think that's all to do. Oh, obviously, this is the 5-year anniversary of AOS. So there's hashtag 5 years of AOS, and that's linked down below. Yeah. So there you go. Any other news? I think that's everything, right?
All I'll say, Cinderfall Gaming GT Grand Tournament on the 1st and 2nd of August in Adelaide, South Australia. It's going to be our first 2-day event back, and it's coming up. It's only a month away, and I am excited. So shout out to Luke Stone for running the event, and it's probably going to be much smaller than it would be normally because of still travel restrictions and things like that. But it's going to be awesome and fantastic, and great to be playing Tournament Hammer again.
You lucky ducks down there in Australia with your responsibility. We're all pulling for you. I can't wait to see what happens. So, are you going to be doing bat reps out of anything you play there? Are you going to do like a good wrap up video? What are you doing?
Yeah. I'll do the normal sort of tournament summary, take photos, and talk through the games and things like that. So it'll be all the Stonehorns doing all the Stonehorn things, and it's going to be a lot of fun, no matter what happens.
There you go. That's right. Did Tom freeze? Is he just sitting there, or is he? No, you're there. Okay. You're muted, Tom. That's what it is. We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry about that.
There you are. Now you're back. All right. Any other news, Tom?
No. I think that's it.
All right, cool. Then let's go to some pick of the week. Doom, what would you like to share with everybody, buddy?
Well, this is a little bit different, and I've taken a bit of a liberty here, but it is the 5-year anniversary show, so I just sort of wanted to, instead of just picking one thing, I want to talk about a host of things. And that was when I look back over 5 years, where we started and then where we've ended up. I just wanted to give a shout out to half a dozen people. So here we go. So I just wanted to firstly mention the YouTube channels that first inspired us, and me particular, and I know a lot of you as well. So shout out to Once Bitten 360, Anthony from the Sustainable Center, and then also Vidhammer Fantasy. They were the reasons why a whole core group of us got into making content, I feel. And then at the same time, when AOS first dropped, there are a whole bunch of content creators that were all together here from day one, and we pushed on through the Wild West, through the no points periods, and we had a lot of internal conflicts. But people like Who's of Doom and Paul Conti and Marok Wolf, which are all still around today and have been going forever. Like, shout out to those guys, awesome and fantastic. And then also just a little bit of a sad note, just recognize some of the channels which were really pivotal throughout that sort of development, but aren't with us anymore. So people like Mitch, MC1 Gamer, and of course William Page, creative name to stand out. We miss you guys, but there was a time there where they played an important role. And then after all of that sort of said and done, and we look at what has come and what's evolved on the content creator side in YouTube, like what an amazing growth and development of content creators we've seen with the game as well. So like people like Anthony Magro, AOS coach, amazing. Dan, AOS Shorts, Rob Sines, Oz Wargamer, Doug from 2+ Tough, Brent, Shu and Jack from Rerolling Ones, Haywo, Twitch and Mr. Mephisto. And of course, don't be a short pants and listen to Grim Dark live. So that's just amazing hosts of content creators who make amazing content, and it's all different. And it's all just grown over the last few years. And of course, now we're finally starting to see Age of Sigmar move, I think, more into pop culture with people like, Goobertown, Squidmar, and Miniac and Sword and Steel and things like that. The size of those channels, the audience they're getting is just pulling people in from everywhere. So, like, you think about us when we were starting, 5-6 years ago, and the sort of content, the sort of viewers, and the numbers, and just how big it was back then to where it is now, and it's like night and day. It's just amazing. So I just wanted to sort of run through that little history and a little shout out, and give everyone a pat on the bum, and yeah.
Yeah, I remember when it was just like it was all touch and go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
which we're going to talk about. We're absolutely going to talk about.
That's what we're going to talk about, but like, that's not where we're at now.
No, absolutely not. I cannot think of a better. That is the greatest pick of the week in the history of picks of the week. Doom, you just wrapped it up. That was like an Oscars in memoriam / lifetime achievement award. That was incredible.
Well, I'll be back in another 5 years for the 10-year one.
There you go.
So.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Tom, anything you want to shout out?
No. There's just so many good. Like, this is what I'll say. Yes, actually, yes. This show is kicking off a series of shows for the 5-year anniversary, and so, check out the content. There's like it's been all over Twitter. But there's a bunch of shows that are all doing special 5-year anniversaries this week. And so check out all those shows to come.
Yes, and down in the description, you will find the Twitter hashtag to follow, which will link you to all of the 5-year anniversary shows. So it's at We Are the Neon, narrative event organizer. I don't know what the second N is for.
Yeah.
Nation? Need something? I don't know. But anyways, Aaron, who is in the chat right now, who's really been leading a lot of this effort. If you go follow at We Are the Neon, Twitter is down in the description. It's there right now, actually. You can follow that. Aaron's been doing awesome, tweeting out everybody who's doing the shows. You can also follow the hashtag that he just put in the comments, which is hashtag 5yearsAOS, and you will find all of that. So there is a bunch of content starting now, going throughout the weekend. Please do check it out. Check out all these channels. Good shout out. I have 2 quick ones. One, the next episode of my ongoing myth-busting show with Trevarian came out on Trevarian's channel, so he and I alternate that. One show is on his channel, one show is on my channel. The one that just came out is on his channel, and it is a spicy meatball. So it is the most recent episode we tackled was Europe is better at miniature painting than the U.S. So
it's true. It's true.
We break it down and talk about what we think about that myth and what that means. So, and just even him posting that link in like the heavier metal painting group resulted in hundreds of interesting comments. So it was a fun time. Go check out a fun episode. I was very happy with that one. And the next episode 4, will be on my channel, and it'll be about non-metallic metal. The other thing I'll mention is that although Nova is canceled, don't forget that the Nova Open Charitable Foundation, the NOCF, is still doing all its raffles, and you can still participate in that to win figs, armies, special art projects, all of that stuff from lots of amazing artists. And that opens up on the 15th of July. So I gave a couple pieces over, namely the big actual art project that I shared out this last weekend. That I had put together. That thing is massive, by the way, if you saw what I shared of all the sort of Jackson Pollock painting of sorts that I did out of all my wipey cloths. That thing is very large. That's like a 3-foot by 2-foot canvas that's all on, so there you go. And also then I did also donate my Imperial Fist Captain that I took to Golden Demon, so you can also participate and win that if you like a sweet Imperial Fist limited edition Captain, which I do, because that's like the coolest 40k mini they made. So there you go. Okay, right on. Link for that is also down in the description. Now, gentlemen, what are you working on? Doom, what's been on your table, buddy? What's your hobby time been?
All right. I don't know if you can see this guy. He's my Khorne Demon Prince. So I got the Thaumaturge, put some demon wings on him, Demon Prince wings on him, and the sword is from an Iron Gut. And yeah, that's what's happening. So I've got 4,000 points of Zench done. They're going to be on the channel soon. And I've got I forgot what his name is. The guy with the anvil and the chain from Blades of Khorne. Just my slaughter. Can't believe I've forgotten his name. But anyways, getting my Blades of Khorne out again, working them up, and the Demon Prince is leading the charge. So that's what I've been working on.
Nice. Now, are you going to be running that under Khorne, or are you going to be running that under Khorne Slaves to Darkness?
No, it's Khorne, and so I've got a Khorne Bloodbound army here, and I revised the list recently, and I tell you what, it's just one slippery slope that heads straight towards Marauders. So, as soon as you have a War Shrine or as soon as you have one Slaves to Darkness unit in there, all of a sudden it just piles, and now you've just got Marauders and War Shrines with your Bloodsecrator and your Slaughter Priests, and everything else is just Slaves to Darkness. So I said, screw it, I'm not going to do that. We're going to keep it as Bloodbound still. We're going to put in a Llama Cap for Always Strikes Last. We're going to put in that Khorne Demon Prince for that sweet command ability and to run around and murk heroes. And with the Hex Gorger Skulls, the anti-magic, I think they can still be they can still do stuff.
Yeah, right on. I dig it. And yes, you're right. It will all building of Slaves to Darkness is a slippery slope down into Marauder land.
Yeah.
You almost can't help yourself. You start building anything else and you're like, I guess these 5 knights, I could just make it 20 Marauders and save 30 points. And
you're like why do I have blood Reavers and Blood Warriors when there's Marauders? Like, it just makes no sense.
Or I could just do Marauders.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. The best unit. All right, Tom, what's been on your hobby table, buddy? Besides a bunch of magic cards in the background.
Ignore that. No, nothing, actually. I'm building a patio outside. And so, like, I've been literally laying 12 by 12 inch pavers in sand for the last week.
Okay. How's that marathon game coming, Tom?
I mean, it'll happen.
You got about 4 days until your house guest shows up, and about 8 days until you need to get down here. So
Yeah, we'll see. It'll be fine.
Just get it done, buddy. Get it done. For myself, you can't see it right now, but everything you cannot see on this screen around me right now looks like a whirlwind hit my office. Okay.
Weird.
Because it's like you can kind of see a little tiny bit of it in the background right there, but it is time for display board making. That is what it is. Yeah. And when it comes time to build the display board that I'm building and utilizing the, let's say, things that I'm using, I'm looking off camera because I'm staring at it right now. This ridiculous thing that I have built and built onto, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I'm at the board itself is just starting back there. That's a bunch of books sitting on top of, pink foam while everything's gluing together, like keeping a bunch of weight on it to make it all stick. But we're in the middle of the project, and I'm hoping that I can get the... I'll go back and forth between this big separate piece thing and the board itself. So there you go. That is going to be my hobby time for at least a good week. It is not an oil drum. It is not an oil drum. I'm not gonna do that. I am very pleased though with what it is. So, time will come. Don't worry. Mm-hmm. You'll all see eventually. Tom has seen it, but that's it.
I have.
Yeah. But it's a thing. It's a heck of a thing. That's what I'll say. All right. Anyway, let's get to this. So, gentlemen, 5 years of AOS. Here we are.
5 years.
5 years, man. 5 years. All right.
Couldn't pass that joke up.
Sure. Okay, so I've got a little visual cues here for everybody that we're going to bring up. So let's go back in time, shall we? Bam! Your faces are now covered for a moment. The Age of Sigmar is coming. Pre-order 4th July 2015. Mm-hmm. Okay? And so that was the initial advertisement we saw. And then I remember as I was driving down to Tom's house, I believe for this marathon, actually, that we're gonna finish here, Tom.
Yeah.
In like a week, we saw these images. Okay? This is one of the images we saw, which was of like the Lord Celestant on Dracoth and the prosecutors and the liberators. And at the time, we had no idea what any of this was. We saw them against the Khorne Bloodbound and all that sort of stuff. So, we'll put those pictures away for a moment. Let's talk about the launch itself, guys. Okay? The launch itself. So, AOS launches. What do you think? What was your initial thoughts? Take yourself back to that time. Doom, let's start with you. Where was your headspace at this time period?
Oh boy. So the box set and the miniatures, I saw them and I thought these are awesome, right? These are really, really cool. There was the whole square base to round base controversy at the time, and it was, and I had to come to terms within myself that I actually liked them on rounds better than squares. And that probably didn't happen till I rebased some of my beasts and looked at them on rounds, and I was like, actually, this is nice. But so I thought the models are excellent. This is just going to be a short release without any points or anything like that, and then we're going to get like the proper book, right? We're going to get like it proper, and we didn't for some time. But I'm jumping ahead. So I was eagerly anxious. I was happy for it. I wanted it to work, but what part of that is because I'd put so much effort into my Warhammer Fantasy YouTube channel. I didn't want it all to go to crap and just everything be gone. So I was like, please be good, please be good, please be good. That's the truth.
Nope, fair enough. Tom, what about yourself?
I don't know. I remember being really mixed on it.
Sure.
Yeah, and just not knowing, right? Like, it was just, everything was up in the air, it seemed.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I understand that what I'm asking now is the equivalent, like, I was there, Gandalf. I was there. You know, like, it's casting your mind back 3,000 years, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, is the answer.
Well, I know how I can sum it up exactly. Confusion.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Confusion was the word of the day. Because I agree with you. Like, I looked at the models and said, yeah, those are cool. I had always wanted something like Stormcast.
Right.
Yeah,
we had talked before, and I'd always wanted, like, I wanted the good guys to have something on the equivalent of Chaos. I hated that they had, like, the market cornered on, you know, warriors. On like, every video, if you want proof in this pudding, by the way, go watch all the old game trailer videos for, like, War and all the other Warhammer Fantasy video games that feature a warrior priest. Because they always featured a warrior priest, and they always featured the warrior priest getting killed.
Just housed.
Just housed. Like, the warrior priest would get messed up, and then he would, like, rise up and summon the power of Sigmar into the Warhammer, and his eyes would glow. And then he would just get, like, kneed in the nuts by, to be direct, but that's literally exactly what happens in the video that I'm referencing here, by a Chaos Warrior, and dies, and gets stabbed and dies.
Yep.
It's, like, so upsetting and defeating that this greatest religious warrior was just nothing, was just fodder to random Chaos Warrior.
Yep.
Right? And at the time, I didn't care much about the death of the old world. I saw Coach mention that in the chat. I didn't care about that. I don't really love the old world much.
Right.
I never did. It's fine. Like, whatever. If you love it, it's fine. I'm not trying to yuck your yum. Like what you like. Okay. But I'm saying I had no personal attachment to it. So I was excited. I always liked Planescape more than Forgotten Realms. Or Greyhawk. And what we did is leave old boring derivative Greyhawk and catapult into Planescape, so I was all about it.
Right.
But the confusion that was there. What books are coming? What's happening? Are we going to get points? Are we not? You know, I went back and looked at some text messages for the time, and I saw a set text that were like, oh no, we're definitely going to get points. It was going to be, it's going to be coming. I'm sure this is just like the initial loss.
Points are definitely coming.
Yeah. Right?
Yep.
That was, and like, so often, I agree with Mogwai, man. You don't miss fake France and fake Egypt. No, I don't. I don't miss fake everything in the world. And I loved the end times. I thought they were amazing. Anyways, the just general confusion, and we're going to go to the next picture, and I'm going to prove to you just how confusing the early times of AOS were. You ready? So pictures back up on screen. Here we go. So we saw our Stormcast, and there was general confusion. There was no points. Then immediately there was, like, people we had Mo comp and Azir comp and just, a bunch of different stuff like that.
Yep.
People immediately adding points and getting the game playable. And then we had this. And what's up on the screen right now, gentlemen, is Warhammer Age of Sigmar, Battle Tome, Chaos, Dreadhold. We got the first Battle Tome released.
You mean this?
Hold on, I'll put the picture down. Do you have it, Tom? There it is. Yep. That's what I mean. That's right.
Well, only to be topped in weirdness. by this. Something most of you don't even know exists.
Sure. Now, here's the funny thing about the Dominion of Chaos, Tom. But leave that to the side for a moment, because I want to talk about that oddity later.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Because timing-wise, the Dominion of Chaos is actually a really interesting book. But anyways, that was the first book we got. Literally, the first battle tome was Chaos Dreadhold. And it had nothing of like, what? Yep. What was going on in the early weeks and months of this game? And this was not yet new GW. Everything was close to the vest. There was no aggressive community team.
No communication.
No communication. What was going on? Confusion reigned.
We didn't even have... You gotta remember, we didn't even have a book of, like, Grand Alliance Order.
Yeah, those hadn't come out yet. Correct.
No, that was a long time.
Right. Yes. So
this was just total madness. Like, to be honest with you, like day one, it comes out. Okay. There's no points. There's nothing. I'll self-comp myself, try and bring something reasonable down to the table to get like an understanding of how the game works. And we had sudden death rules into the basic, like to win or lose, right? If this guy dies, because you have more, And so first thing I do, I put down. My friend rocks up, smiles at me, puts Nagash and the bloody Necrosphinx down, and just solos my entire Chaos army. I had 5 games in a row, back to back, where I was the only one self-comping, and everyone else was going full ham on me. And I was like, okay. It's like where the whole house is on fire around you, but you're saying it's fine. And then when this Dreadhold stuff came out, I remember sitting here and we were sort of talking. We're going, oh no, they've got this grand design, this great plan where they're trying to build a new type of world and a new imaginative gaming system, which is in a complete different direction. And Games Workshop are the biggest modeling company in the world, so they know what they're doing, and this is going to be great. Let's wait and see. But really, they had no idea, and they were just flinging shit out left, right, and center. What have we got ready, guys? I don't know. Everything's we've burned everything down. Just throw it out there. And here's all of us like speculating and wow, where's this going? And oh man, I feel like an idiot now. Like looking back at it then, knowing what I know now. I still want to know. I still want to just be a fly on the wall for that entire first year. Like, wow.
Well, especially the first 6 months, because I think you can feel the strong directional change when 2016 hit.
Yes.
Right? I think you could start to feel the change in the wind. But that first 6 months, especially the latter half of 2015, just felt like complete chaos. Like nobody knew what was going on. I agree the house was on fire. Some people were sitting around going everything's fine. Some people were grabbing cups of water and just tossing it around. Somebody was trying to like spray foam, but it wasn't like actual flame retardant foam. It was like party rave foam.
Yeah.
And it was just chaos. It was just madness.
Storm was playing in the background. Like,
yeah.
Yes. It was, and this is, I think, an interesting time because it's where the community stepped up, right? Like, let's be honest. The latter half of 2015 and certainly into the early part of 2016, this was the time when I think we as a community all got together and went, okay, the company doesn't know what they're doing. Right? Like, I mean, admittedly, it was one of the worst launches. It was as bad as the original launch of Star Wars Galaxies, the MMO, or when War launched, or when No Man's Sky launched, right? Like, it was one of these things that was so built up to just crash and burn as a horrible... It was right up there with these bad video game launches, right? Now, I mention all of those because those did all actually become really good games. They had really rough initial launches, but then all became good games. So I think there's actually a good parallel there.
Right.
And I think that the community all kind of got together and said, well, I guess we'll make a game then. Right? Yeah. And just took the pieces we were handed and made a game. Like, Tom and I made the Mordheim rule set, and you had...
Nuno just called it out in the chat. Yeah.
And you had various people making incredible community rule sets for everything, by the way.
Right.
Filling out scenarios for people who wanted more scenarios, filling out points for people who wanted points, right? Just everything that was needed, the community stepped in and created.
Yep.
Right?
Yep, that's what happened.
The whole deal.
we had there's 20 odd plus battle reports in a playlist on my channel of back in the Wild West times with no points. And of those 20 odd battle reports, 5 of them were actually some of the best games I ever had, where it's, we're rocking around with 13 monsters on the table on monster only armies and stuff like that. But in order to get one good game, you had to have like 4 bad games. And then it was, and I was literally at the point where I'd persevered. I really wanted to work. And then Mo Comp and Pool Comp came out, and we started playing those at a local club. And then once you had some sort of balance constraints, the game itself is able to shine through, and it was so much fun. And we started having a blast with the freedom of it, just with some restrictions. And and that's when it started to take off. And then, of course, probably the next thing on your little slide, Vince.
Yes. So let's go here. So after this Dreadhold, there's one more book I wanted to highlight. Everybody remember the first Seraphon book? I highlight this one because just to continue the chaos of what the heck is going on when we kind of got one of these. I highlight the Seraphon book because it wasn't the first actual army battle tome, but it was the first non-released armies battle tome, because the first 2 were Stormcast and Bloodbound, right, that they came out with.
Not just Bloodbound. You got to remember, they released a nice Magnet Collector's Edition cover.
Yes. Oh, there you go. That's right. Very nice, Tom. Very nice. I like how Tom had to go get all his ridiculous toys. The Seraphon one, though, that's when we introduced Dream Lizards, right? That's where that whole concept came from.
And we're like, okay, what is happening?
So we had just like left turned on a left turn. Like we were just shooting off literally into the stars. It was madness. And we were all given into it. Like, okay, I guess Seraphon are all just Dream Lizards now. Just remembered into existence. It was a crazy, crazy time. I cannot explain how weird this whole time was. Yeah. But yes. So 2015 turns into 2016. I remember.
Hold on. There was a December release there that you missed.
I'm not going to go through every release, Tom. No, but yes, just for you, Everchosen came out.
But this was. I think this highlights the weirdness even farther than the Lizards. Okay.
The Everchosen battle tome.
We get the Everchosen battle tome. Mm-hmm. This battle tome has 4 units in it.
Sure. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It is an entire battle tome. The collector's edition book isn't even a normal size. Like, let me point that out. This doesn't fit on any normal bookshelf.
Right, because it's not a standard binding. Yes.
Right. So it's like the case is an oversized book. And if you want it on your shelf, you have to not have the box with all the metal tokens and the art prints and the everything. It was just weird. Just weird.
Tom is one of the 7 people on the planet that owns the limited edition Everchosen battle tome. Yes.
Hypothetically, there are 1,000 people.
No, hypothetically there were 1,000 printed, and hypothetically there are a lot sitting in a warehouse in GW somewhere, or in various stores, or sold off to secondhand stores.
Yeah. And let me point out, there were more units in that book. I'm sorry, there were more battalions in that book than units.
Well, you've got Archaon and Varangard. You don't need much more. But this was also the time of the silly rules. They were all still rampant through all the different factions, and also we were still very much in. All the armies had been broken down into keyword specific sub factions. Little what do you call them? Little ghettos.
Yeah, little ghettoized danglers. Yeah.
Yep. And that
the
was
ghettoization of AOS.
Yeah, the ghettoization of AOS and the
language we used. Yeah.
Yep, and the legacy war scrolls with the carryover rules with the silly rules. That was the world we're in still.
Yep. So I remember that first Adepticon from 2016, and there was maybe 60 people I think for that tournament that year.
I wasn't there that year.
Yeah, I was there that year. Yeah. It was good fun though. Everybody who was there was having a great time. It was because they were using obviously one of the, I don't remember what exact comp they were using that year, but they were using one of them. And what I will say is, it was really fun, and everybody there had a really great time. And Alex did. That was where I think Alex proved that he's one of the greatest TOs ever by running that and keeping it alive and having a great freaking tournament with 60 people that showed, and just growing and growing from there. Okay, so back to the pictures. So Seraphon, you're Everchosen. We get into 2016. The wind starts changing with sort of what's happening at Adepticon and announcements, and then of course, before that, I do have one more thing. I wanted to real quick talk about the Forgotten Tomes. So I have this up on the screen right now.
Sure.
This is the Forgotten Tomes. Okay. So these are all the tomes they printed that don't actually have any rules in them. Right? That are just like picture books and storybooks, which is fine. There's nothing wrong. A lot of good stories in here.
Yep.
But they have like no rules. So this is Dreadhold, Eternals, Bloodbound, Seraphon, Everchosen, First Fireslayers, Skaven Pestilence.
Yeah, to be clear, they're lore books with the War Scrolls.
Right. They had the War Scrolls.
But there's no allegiance rules, there's no artifacts, there's no items, there's no sense of any of that. Right. They do have battalions in those, though. Sure.
Stormcast Extremists, Ironjaws, and the last one was Flesh Eater Courts. These are all of the Forgotten Tomes, right? They just have no actual real purpose, basically.
I have some of those over on my shelf.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. But at the end of the period of Forgotten Tomes, then came this magical book right here. The First General's Handbook, 2016. Points being in there. The designation into open narrative and match play created
still
in this.
At the same time, too, right?
We'll get there in a second. We'll get to Sylvaneth in a moment. Shortly after. So, the open match to narrative breakdown, we get points. We get the rules refined, scenarios. Basically, this was it. I'm gonna minimize that out again. So, hold on. What do you got there, Doom? What's that?
Well, I mean, the GHB was excellent, but what about this first anniversary Hessian sack they gave out to everyone? Right?
Is that a real thing?
That's a real thing. You got this in store when you purchased over X amount of dollars, the 1 year anniversary of Age of Sigmar. This Hessian sack. It's amazing. And I got another one. I think this is a 40K one. But I
remember that actually.
Yeah. So I just thought that was so cool. And I thought, this is a Hessian sack. I'm never going to use it. I'm still coming up with ideas, but I thought I just want to keep it because when are you ever going to get
it's true.
That's amazing. Isn't it?
All right, gentlemen, the two of you need to vamp for just a second. I'll be right back. I need to go help my wife.
I'm super jealous. Doom, I was super proud of the fact that I have one of the display backgrounds.
Yeah.
I'm talking about how they, when they'd set up on a little 2x2 section and they'd set the background that had the lava scape with the lightning strikes and said Warhammer-ing Sigmar.
Yep.
I have one of those.
Right.
With the square, with the the Realm of Battle board square that came with it.
Yeah.
And I was proud of that.
No. My sack's way cooler.
Your sack is way cooler.
So let's go and talk about the points though, because when the points were introduced with GHB 2016, it was like a revolution for the game. And everyone that I knew that had stopped playing completely flocked back to it and started to try it again. And then also everyone that was and a lot of 40K players also decided to try to come across. And the player base went from basically 8 of us hipsters really trying to make it work to 16 or 24 players in my local community almost overnight. So that introduction of points was just revolutionary.
It was just night and day. It was just it completely changed the entire conception of what was going on. It was so good. It was so good.
All right. And is that all you got to say, mate? So good. We're meant to be padding for time here while Vince is away.
Well, I'm going to move on without him.
Good.
So at about the same time, within a month or two, it was that summer, we'd had glimpses, at least before the JHB, of Sylvaneth coming.
Right.
We had seen the image of the ghost elf, right, with stuff growing out of them, and everybody was like, "The elves are here! What's going on?" Yeah. And then we got Alariel, which was one thing that that GW that was banging on all cylinders at this time was their model design.
Yeah,
because they had Archeon, and then they had Alariel shortly within short order, within about 6 months, and they showed that they can build models.
Yep,
really, really pretty ones.
Yep, and that's where we also saw Rob Science, right, on his little stool with his Sylvaneth battle tome.
That's right. So hold on, let's bring up the picture. That was my introduction to Rob. Boom.
Yeah.
Order Battle Tome Sylvaneth, the book that would change it all, right? Because this is the one that would set basically the template going forward. Now, obviously, it's been refined some. There are things out of this that they ended up obviously changing, and they went from having sort of mega battalions and everything into sub factions, and so there were design shifts. But this was really when we introduced command traits and artifacts and everything that we now think of as being the construction of a modern battle tome. And yes, this was also when we got introduced to this big, gorgeous army, right? Like this was game changer all over. And yes, I remember Rob. The thing was they handed him the book and they just had him read the book, and he's like, "Oh, what's this? Oh, this is amazing." They just had Rob being Rob, right? That was the Sylvaneth teaser video, right?
Yep.
Yeah. This book meant so much for Age of Sigmar moving forward. The feedback around it was overwhelmingly positive, and it added so much more to the different armies and the allegiances. So this was the template that got applied for the next few battle tomes, and then it got modified a little bit more again.
Yep, absolutely. So I mean,
oh wait, and it was the introduction of those most horrible poxy trees onto the tabletop, which for years ruined my ruined yeah, just wanted to get that little bit out there.
I agree. It was some good, some bad. There's the first time we made the mistake of introducing a bunch of forests that would go out everywhere, and somehow even now this last year we've failed to learn from our mistakes.
Not a lesson that we learned.
But is it the first introduction of faction-specific terrain, which then carried across as well?
Yes.
Well, the trees had been around for a long time. Like it had always kind of been the concept that the wood elves would have woods they would put down. Like that isn't a new thing. That had been
in AOS though, it was the first implementation of
faction-specific terrain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely. But we didn't see it like that at the time, right? We saw it as the continuation of what Wood Elves had always done.
Right, we're like, of course they get these, and then we get to I guess Nurgle. So then we get late in this edition, and suddenly everything is drained.
Yeah,
not everything, but we begin to see it crop up in other armies. Let me say it that way.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the Sylvaneth tome really set. I think this was the other big game changer, right? Between GHB 2016 and the Sylvaneth tome. It really felt like there in 2016, it was like, oh, this is a game now.
Right.
Yep.
This is a full-fledged game now. Your armies are your armies. There's a reason to play your armies. They feel like real armies. They do things when you take certain things together in a real way. And this is the future. I think we, for the first time, saw the future snap into focus.
Yeah, most importantly, we saw a direction. And that was so important. It's just to be able to look at the game and go, okay, this is what the game is, and this is where it's headed. Excellent, let's go.
Yep. Now, I want to return to something, Tom, that you mentioned earlier. So here's how this went. Sylvaneth was the first one, and I think we still regard Sylvaneth as kind of a high watermark. It was a great book. It was a great army release. That book held up for quite a while.
Yep.
Yes, there were problems with it, but it was all in all a pretty darn decent book.
Yep.
We got Bone Splitters next. That was the next book we got.
Yep.
Do you know what the third book was? Get out the Dominion of Chaos, Tom, because that's what it was. That's when that released. Just randomly in the middle, Dominion of Chaos. So we were getting these new tomes, and then they were like, and also, here's this Dominion of Chaos book.
They're like, we're going to try the Terrain book 2.0.
So this is when we had the Numinous Oculum, Dragon Fate Dais, Baleful Realm Gate, Ophidian Archway, these things, right?
Yep. And not with War Scroll, with battalions. So here's a battalion that is 3 Baleful Realm Gates called the Realm Gate Matrix. It is a terrain battalion. Mm-hmm. Here is the Bound Arcanabulum battalion. I got nothing.
Well, I will say, there was because they modeled all of these, they came up with them internally. They had a heavy focus on Age of Sigmar terrain leading up to its release, and it was a conscious effort to say, you know what, we want to make terrain a big part of this game, and I guess that is different from what we'd seen from them in Warhammer Fantasy and so forth, right? And especially in such a short amount of time to come out with so many new terrain kits and 2 battle tomes for the terrain. It was such an intentional part of their design of what they wanted Age of Sigmar to be. So I actually think that's really cool. And I actually want to see them continue to develop that, because the terrain side of Age of Sigmar is, I think, extremely important. Like, I think that ties in with amazing models and amazing terrain that just makes for amazing gaming. So they were a bit off with how they tried to implement it. I'm not sure they knew what they were doing there, but overall, I do like the focus that they had on it.
Yeah. It was just such an interesting book to insert into the middle of it, because we felt like we were on a roll. I'm like, oh, okay, see where the game's going. We're going to start getting army battle tomes. This is what's happening. And then, bam, Dominion of Chaos just smacked out of nowhere, proving that they could still suddenly go left on us, right? Just like, you think they're going right, you think they're going to zig, nope, they'll zag.
Yeah, they weren't 100% sure where they were going still at that point. They had some indications, but it was still a bit up in the air.
So we got the Beast Claw Raiders book, and I think this is important. Somebody mentioned in the comments, because the end of 2016 would bring us the Warhammer Quest box set, which would reveal a lot of models. Oh, we lost Tom. That's okay. Tom will be back in a moment, I'm sure. So we got the Warhammer Quest box set, which revealed, of course, a couple interesting models that would eventually lead to what, in my opinion, was the next game changer battle tome. 2017 kicking off strong with the Disciples of Tzeentch battle tome. Okay?
Well, that was a learning experience.
Yes. So I bring this up to say, one, obviously we got to see a lot of the models from Silver Tower get sort of brought into play, right?
Some of them, yes.
Some of them, yes.
Yep.
But also, it was like when we actually made a turn. Here's the important change that happened with Disciples of Tzeentch. Okay? Yep. There was this magical thing that hadn't really happened in the first couple years of AOS that we all didn't realize we weren't having discussions about. And that was the concept of busted armies.
Sure.
Like, there were busted models. Like, we would talk about a model being busted or something, right?
Yep.
But when battle tomes weren't really a thing, and even then when they weren't really kind of... Even the Sylvaneth one was like, okay, it's cool, it's neat that they can do this stuff, but it was what it was. But Disciples of Tzeentch introduced the idea of a broken army, when people were just like, this army is broken.
Yeah. Or suddenly you have mechanics that are just so dominant that you're just like, yep. You know, obviously combined with units.
Right. It would relaunch us into the age of arguing over which army was out of balance. And of course, Tzeentch would be at the top of that list many times throughout in between 2017 and even now to this day. It still haunts us. The changer of ways. He's
clearly we didn't learn that lesson.
No, we did not.
I feel like, and I don't know this for a fact, but I think that Tzeentch was pivotal in the implementation of playtesting at Games Workshop, because I don't think at this point they had any playtesting or any comprehensive or systemic playtesting or anything like that. It was just, rules writers, make it, it's great, and put it out, and we were like, well, what's going on? They'd seen this massive growth in Age of Sigmar. They saw there was real potential there for its future. And then with this book, it was all of a sudden like, whoa, we need to make sure that we don't have this book repeat again. And I feel like this book was responsible for the implementation of playtesting and all the things that we've seen come afterwards. So I don't know if that's true. Like, I don't know if that's true, but that's my feeling as to how things played out. No, there was no talk.
No talk about playtesters until before that. And people who I know that were first gen playtesters, I don't think they were playtesters at this point in time.
Yeah. So
that's a really interesting dot.
Because it really did have a huge impact. Like when Zench did what Zench did initially, it was the first time that we'd just seen it, like Vince said, where it just came out and it just smashed everyone. Like, ooh, those Skyfires were just ridiculous. Chain Chase was ridiculous. Any type of Zench army you built was crazy. Destiny Dice is just cheating, just straight cheating.
Just straight.
And yeah, and the mortal wound output from the spells was insane.
Yeah,
and
right.
Wow, it was just what an army. And we saw it win the Australian Masters that year as well.
It won Adepticon barely that year.
Yeah.
And so it was, that's why I really wanted to talk about that tome, because it was so fascinating to me how hard we had pivoted. When you think about, really, I want you to think about this for a moment.
Yeah.
The tome that immediately preceded Disciples of Tzeentch was the Beastclaw Raiders book.
Go the beats.
And the tome that immediately preceded it, that followed it, was the Stormcast Eternals 2017 version. Like the forgotten the most forgotten Stormcast Eternals book.
The Vanguard edition.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. It was just such this singular meteorite striking the earth, right? It was crazy how weird of and impactful and out of balance that book was when it hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had other things around that time, like Vanguard-ing with Stormcast, and there was quite a lot of little really skewed things that were going around at that time.
Well, no, Vanguard-ing was next year.
Was it?
Like, yeah. Because that year, this was at because Vanguard-ing hit its peak then a year later. Because I remember very clearly, because this year the top tables at Adepticon were like my Mixed Chaos and top table was Dan Heelan with Sylvaneth and Sean Clark with Tomb Kings, and because that was right in the middle of the spamming the Tomb Kings height. And then table 2 was Caleb piloting a Tzeentch, and then me with Mixed Chaos.
Because it was January, right?
Yeah, it was January. That was 3 months prior, and I'm talking in March.
Yeah.
And then the next table was like Relian was running like the snowball hurling mixed destruction.
The Moo clan. Yeah, but I mean, CanCon 2017, I reckon we had Vanguard, Wing, and Zench smashing up against each other.
Yes, like that's the following year. Because then that's the year that we had Tzeentch on Vanguard-ing for the championship.
Right.
Sean Clark.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but 2017 would give us many interesting things at the beginning of the year. So obviously we got, as you mentioned, the Vanguard for Stormcast Eternals, which largely was like one of the coolest looking part of the Stormcast army that I think still to this day is kind of always been underrepresented in the rules. It's always been sort of the one that didn't have the best home. Yeah. It would give us the Blades of Khorne. So book 2, second. So we're on our
all
third
in first edition.
Right. Well, we're on our third Stormcast book.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That Stormcast was the third Stormcast book.
Yep.
And then we get our second Khorne book. Can't get enough of those.
Yeah, I could go grab that other one, but I won't.
Sure. But of course, we cannot leave behind another critical release of 2017. There was one more critical book that would come out in 2017, Tom. Do you remember what book that was, Tom? What army book came out in 2017?
Yeah. In late April of 2017, we got KO.
We did. We got the Caradhran Overlords as they hit, and we got this taste of what truly I think the AOS army the AOS of AOS armies look like.
The AOSification of armies look like. This. It became what I would consider the paradigm example of AOS armies.
Martin said that was the second Stormcast book. No, it wasn't. There were 3. there was the original Stormcast Eternals, and then there was Stormcast Extremis, which, yes, was not a full Stormcast Eternals battle tome, but there was a Stormcast Extremis book, which I am counting as a Stormcast book. Y'all got 4 books. Don't try to pretend like one of them didn't get printed.
Yes.
So, at any rate, yes, Caradhran Overlords, 2017, and it was like, oh my god, it's crazy. It hits the table. The shooting is insane. It's madness.
We're like, Zinch 2.0, let's do this.
Yeah. Guns coming out everywhere. People spamming mortars. And the world freaks out and explodes, right? Immediately, everybody's freaking out about KO and the damage it could do at range and all of this
all
kind
hypothetical.
Of stuff.
They didn't actually take any events.
Sure. But immediately, there was chaos because everybody was afraid of KO and the shooting power it represented.
Yeah.
And so what immediately happens is a series of quick changes where every war scroll in the book basically gets changed, including like a hard reprint of a full war scroll in the General's Handbook 2017.
That was 3 months later, yeah.
It was 3 months later.
Or 4 months.
Whatever. It was July or August, whatever it came out.
It was August. Yep, 4 months. Yep.
Where we got the reprint of the
New Thunderer Scroll.
The New Thunderer Scroll. Just randomly, here's a new war scroll. Weirdest way to decide to do that ever. Yep. Tom goes in hard on KO, and then they change his whole army out from under him.
And Tom exploded all over the internet.
Oh my god!
The most vocal I'd ever seen Tom. He was raging everywhere, writing letters to game designers and firing rockets left, right, and center. He was so upset, and I have no sympathy for him.
This was the summer of rage for Tom, because this is also when they would do all the Tomb Kings changes in this same year. Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember
they were earlier in the year. They were in the January of that year.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. I do have sympathy for you, Tom. I know how much first money you spent to get the units with that composition of weapons, and then also the effort in the conversions to make that cool army, and then bam, that change hit, and it was rage time.
Let me just say that, like, it was the first army that I went all in on that was an AOS army.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Like, everything I had prior to that were fantasy armies.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was the time that I went, okay, fine. If this is the direction we're going, I'm going to buy in to AOS.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought in.
Mm-hmm.
And then they swept the carpet right out from underneath me.
Sure.
Yeah.
And this is so what I'll call 2017 is the year of rage. Okay? Because this was Tom's year of rage. The Tomb Kings changes, the KO changes, and what was crazy about it was that would be the last battle tome we'd get in 2017.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It would just kind of sit there, and we didn't, like, we got other stuff later in the year. Like, other things came out later in that year, obviously. General's Handbook and beyond. But that was the last actual battle tome we would get in 2017. I remember us going, what's going on? Are we just not getting stuff anymore? Now, obviously, 40K, their new edition would come out that year, right? So that took up a lot of the oxygen in the room. But that was a heck of a year. Doom, anything else you thought about that, about 2017, about that KO and then months of nothing?
No, I was pretty happy actually at that point, to be honest with you. The only thing I'll say about KO and the change to the War Scroll was that it probably signified the future for Stormfiends, and also a bit of a recognition of direction with Games Workshop about how they write their rules to be linked with the actual model kits themselves. So that I think there was a point there where they said, right, from now on, we are going to try to write rules for new units where, you don't need to buy 10 boxes to get 10 of the weapons to make one unit. And I think we've seen that sort of carry out to some extent since then in pretty much everything, and then updated for other units like Stormfiends, for example, as times happen. So it was a bit of a recognition point and a change in GW's process as well.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So 2017 fades away.
Yep.
And that leads us right into 2018, and here I have the Maggotkin of Nurgle kicking off 2018, much as its Zinchi brother had before.
And that was the second book where we got terrain. Let me point that out.
Yes. So now, again, that's the reason I pulled Maggotkin is multiple things.
Yep.
So I pulled Maggotkin, one, because, yes, it introduced us to faction terrain when we got the trees.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Also, the relevant part about Maggotkin was obviously it heralded the coming change.
Of the Plague Touched.
Well, no, of the summoning. No, Plague Touch happened the year before for me. What happened here was that we began to predict, because Malign Portents happened the month after this, and we began to predict, because of how terrible the summoning was and because the mechanics were working. I remember saying, if this stuff was free, I wouldn't hate this summoning mechanic, but it's not.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
And exactly right. It would herald the beginning of the Soul Wars and the coming of AOS 2.0, right? Yep. We get the logo change, that Maggotkin of Nurgle. And so over the first, we would get the last 4 battle tomes that were all like, quote unquote, AOS 2.0 ready, but we're still AOS 1.0 tomes in Nurgle, Legions of Nagash, Daughters of Cain, and Idneth Deepkin.
Oof. Yeah.
Right?
Man, that was a hot 3 months.
It was a very packed 3-4 month period. Yeah, absolutely. I submit.
By the way, you skipped Firestorm, the Firestorm campaign.
I did.
Just don't even talk about it. Just
no. But you got to remember, like, I want to point this out. Like, that prior summer was the Firestorm campaign was actually a live event that got tracked, and the results from that live event globally dictated the design of the trajectory.
Yeah, but there's like 50% of all the armies you could play were Order. So they tracked them throughout all the different stores.
Order
it was just like skewed. So Order 1, like whoop-de-doo. Like,
but then that became our Cities of Sigmar. Like, that's my point, though, is that like we. Yeah.
I hated the bolt-on that was Firestorm. I could not stand it, and I started to get frustrated at that point with bolt-ons into AOS. And I saw this ever ballooning problem with it, and I really wasn't a fan. So I'm happy that evolved into Cities of Sigmar, because Cities of Sigmar is excellent, but I wasn't a big fan of that at all.
Sure. Yeah. No, totally fair. I just want to point out that the Daughters of Cain trailer initially released at LVO. Still the greatest army release trailer they've ever done.
I remember when they did that and we did our reaction video and we're like, we're in.
Yeah, frame by frame. They had me in that trailer. Incredible. Second best is obviously the Slaanesh trailer reveal. But
we had not
Daughters
seen
the best.
Any rules, anything. And I remember we were both like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah, we're buying this army.
Yes. Yep.
I saw the tail of Marathi and I was like, I'm in for this army. That's all I did. I saw some snake ladies, and some elves with wings, and I was like, "This is what I have been waiting for all of my life." Yep. This was incredible.
It was.
Mm-hmm. We were all at the CanCon barbecue, just as CanCon was happening, just at the Friday night before it kicked off, and that trailer came out, and everyone was just losing their minds. Yeah,
it was incredible. It was so good, and. I've watched that trailer without hyperbole 500 times. Okay, that's not an exaggeration, because I made a playlist of that trailer and like 3 other songs that I thought all fit the sort of murder cult aspect of Daughters of Cain, and I would paint for hours watching a loop on YouTube of those 4 things. So it was about 13 minutes of content. And for months, I would paint with just that 13 minutes of content rolling in the background while I was painting my daughters. So, I've watched that trailer a lot of times.
So half of the watch total count.
It's just me. Yeah, it's me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. All right. So, we would get... What did you think of Idneth when they came out, Doom? Because that was obviously another big army, right? Yep. Idneth, this whole new force... crazy thing going on. It was nuts, right? These weird wet sea elves and their broken up ships and everything about that. What was your reaction to Idneth when they came out?
I loved them. I absolutely loved that as a concept and as a direction. And I thought this is going to look amazing on the tabletop with the seahorses, the turtle, like a fantastic opportunity for painters to really get into it and just make a spectacular army. And so I guess this was also the introduction of Always Strikes First, in a sense, which, I don't like at all. But it was just this one army, right? So, okay, it's cool. This is their specific thing. No problems, right? No problems. Everything's still okay. It's fine.
Wrong.
Wrong. But the army itself, I loved it. I like the idea of it. Everything was cool. People seem to be upset about the Aether concept, but it's a magic world, so make whatever. But no, Idneth, excellent.
Yeah, I think truly the one tragedy of Idneth was it was one of the worst internally balanced books. When it initially came out, you just had things that were so all over the shop on efficiency and on just like effectiveness, on efficacy, between the incredible Eidolons that still aren't probably playable for their points, or not really the best choice. I mean, they're okay now. They've got no place where they're like okay. I don't want to say they're unplayable. That's not fair. They're just okay.
Remember, they also now can't take realm items.
Sure. But
it's a real crime to not have aspects of the storm and aspects of the sea on the tabletop, to not have turtles crunching around.
Exactly. The turtle was my real heartbreak.
Yeah.
Or sharks. Like sharks are just now playable at 100.
Yeah. So I think that it was when it came out, it was just so weirdly off balance. And if you remember, they actually then printed the wrong points.
Yeah.
Immediately after that, like it came out, and then the GHB adjusted the points incorrectly, and then like everything was all like that was just a mess.
And that's when we got our 6-month rotations, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was immediately following that, we got the promise that fall of every 6 months you will get an adjustment.
Sure.
Yep. I mean, everyone learns from their mistakes, right? But so far, we're like mistake.
Sure.
But
it's a learning process.
Yeah,
it's a great game.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. All right, so we get those tomes, and then of course that leads us into Malign Sorcery, and which is obviously the birth of the endless spells, a massive number of endless spells, and Stormcast Eternals with the launch of AOS 2.0 that summer in 2018. So, which was a really well-handled, I think, transition into a quote-unquote new edition of a game.
It was a beautiful launch. Like, it was just a wonderful, smooth transition.
Yeah.
Well, come on. Do we need to talk about the countdown to Malign Portents or what?
Oh, well, geez. Obviously, that was a bunch of nonsense.
Well, luckily, that wasn't to the new edition.
Right.
Yeah.
That was to the narrative event that was bought. The new edition was a smooth transition.
All right. We'll let it slide then. Cool.
And wonderful, wonderful starter box. Wonderful, like it was a wonderful addition change.
Yeah. I agree. So that fourth Stormcast Eternals book, fourth time's a charm. We'll get it. Still didn't get it.
That was the one that I stopped buying the limited edition, the collector's edition version.
Sure.
That fourth.
The fourth one.
Sorry. No, I did buy that one.
No,
the one after. No.
There hasn't been one since. So
there hasn't been one since. No. I don't know.
Maybe in the future you will, but I
doubt it. I looks like I did buy that one too.
So there you go. So we got Stormcast, we got Night Hunt. It was a smooth launch. Endless spells were invigorating. And here's what I'll say. They did clean up the rules, but what I'm very impressed by is obviously AOS 1 we had.
For Gloomspite, we skipped over Gloomspite.
We didn't skip Gloom. Oh. I've got it.
Oh, they're the next year. Okay, sorry.
I got it.
Sorry.
We got our Ghosty Boys and our Stormcast.
Yep.
And here's what I actually was very impressed with. The AOS 1 rules were 4 pages, right? That was the challenge. And that was quite literally the challenge handed to Jervis. He's been very open about this, that somebody said, you have to write this in 4 pages. Like, he's told this story, right? Somebody said, you have 4 pages to do the entire rules for the game. You may not go 1 word over 4 pages. And he talked about how he got it down to, like, 12 or 8, and he thought it was still kind of, that was a little too thin. And he took that up to whomever, and they said, nope, 4. 4 is what it has to be, right?
Yep.
And I find it fascinating that in AOS 2.0, we actually went to basically a 12-page rule set.
We did.
With 2 of those pages kind of being not as necessary. It's actually more like a 10-page rule set because 2 of the pages are kind of extraneous information about stuff that you don't necessarily need.
Yep.
Garrisoning rules and things like that. But I thought it was actually exactly right. And it's funny to me because if he had stuck to his original
10 pages,
10 pages or whatever, we probably would have had something more like the AOS 2 rule set originally.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And I think for the most part, the AOS 2 rule set has proven itself to be quite robust. Built on that 10, 12 pages of rules, it's strong.
Yep.
It's got what we need.
Yep.
Doom, what did you think about the 2.0 launch?
Stacking command abilities was the first. I'm always bringing up the negatives, so let's not focus on that. So,
hey, I'm not. So you
listen, I'll be Tom for today. No, listen, you're right. Sacrosanct Chamber and Stormcast were amazing. Nighthaunt was absolutely fantastic, and the biggest thing that impressed me most was the concept behind endless spells and having a physical representation of spells on the tabletop moving around. For me, that's the coolest new introduction to Age of Sigmar in a long time. And so it was, overall, I was really happy with it, I think. I was pretty happy with it. It's good.
No, I agree. I think that it was good. And, look, it's fair, your pushback. Like, some of the endless spells were way wrong when they were initially printed. Like, Spell Portal was completely busted when it was initially printed. Like, we don't need to gloss over this. There were a lot of problems with command point stacking, right? Like, there was challenges. Although, on the bright side, those were hammered down fairly quickly.
Tight and quickly. Like, this is it's at this time, like, their like feedback rule response FAQ cycle hit that 2-week mark. Like, about this time, I think it was, where, like, when things would get caught, that stuff would get locked down quickly.
Yeah, I think as well, the other really significant point here was the implementation of their their rules writing standards, their standard language for use with certain rules. So that was really important because it meant that we didn't have 3 different units with rules that did the same thing but in 3 different ways, which meant they could open up the potential to interact with other rules in different ways. So to bring all of that in line and streamline it is another critical point in the development of Age of Sigmar, I believe.
Yeah, 100%. AOS 2 is when they formally introduced their glossary, right?
Yeah.
When they actually put together their full glossary of terms and started using it. When you started to see like rules that were clearly doing the same thing, worded in the same verbiage.
Yeah.
Right. So that the confusion stopped. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. So AOS 2, or the other tome, by the way, the only other tome that would come out that year, in 2018, there is one more. That was our Beasts of Chaos, which maybe we can say, kind of not the best tome. Had a lot of potential.
No, it is the best tome to today. I think if you take Nighthaunt and Beasts of Chaos, that's what I want every tome to be.
Sure.
Right? Not Zench. I think that they got left behind by all the other tomes that came out. But if I could go back and rework them all, I want them all to be Beasts of Chaos or all to be Nighthaunt.
I don't disagree with you in premise or in principle. I will push back slightly on this. Where I felt like they missed the opportunity with Beasts of Chaos was that they still hadn't fully contemplated and it's really, really pronounced in Beasts, they still hadn't fully contemplated the elite model problem and what that meant, and they still hadn't contemplated the non-hero monster problem. And by the way, this is still a problem to this day that we haven't solved, right?
Right.
The non-hero monster problem is very pronounced in Beasts of Chaos when you have things like chimeras and gorgons and cygors and all that stuff that are just so janky and worthless. Like, I went back and was looking at the gorgon.
Right.
The gorgon is one of the coolest models they've ever made. That kit is very old, right?
Yeah.
And yet still amazing to this day. That is a gorgeous model. The Gorgon Cygor kit is fantastic, top to bottom. I will hear no other takes. Right? It is a jewel of of Warhammer models.
Mm-hmm.
That model, assuming it's unwounded, and it gets into something, okay, does an average of like 6 damage in its current rule set. That's what it does. 6 damage. Okay.
Sounds like a 200-point model to me.
Does that feel at all appropriate for that monster? Like when the verisimilitude cracks, like that just breaks. There is no way that monster does 6 damage on average.
Yep.
And that's where I feel like the Beast of Chaos Tome is let down. Not with stuff like, I feel like they got the Horde stuff right. The Gores and the Ungors and the Bestigors are all cool and have a lot of potential. The way Bray Shamans buff their people and make them move faster. The Herdstone is one of the best pieces of terrain that they, like a faction terrain that they ever made in the way it interacts. Their summoning is smooth and perfect. Like, there are so many elements of that tome that are right on, but it has these massive Achilles heels that just hurt my soul. I agree with you power level wise, which I think is what you're saying. The Beast of Chaos tome and the Nighthaunt tome, and by the way, like the Slaves to Darkness minus Marauders, I would put in there. Probably Maw Tribes is in this space, honestly. Like, there's a lot of tomes that I would slide into this space. The current Blades of Khorne tome, which we'll talk about in just a moment, right? I think fits in this space, right? These are the good tomes. We look at them with a bit askance because there are all these other busted tomes that came out around them.
Right.
But these are actually the shining jewels that we should be seeking to emulate.
Right.
Right. So I think you're dead on there. Right.
Yep. None of those tomes do everything. They all do something unique. And if you had an internal meta that was just those books, you would be a similar power level with each army being unique on the tabletop and providing a challenge which is difficult to overcome, as opposed to sometimes where you get like, okay, well it just does everything in one book and obsoletes all the other tomes. So no, but I love the Beast of Chaos. I hear what you're saying about the monsters, though. It's hard to disagree with you.
Yeah, the other thing I'll point out, by the way, the one thing I think the Beast Tome actually did absolutely correctly, and there's kind of this movement against this right now that I think is wrong-headed, is Beast of Chaos had sub-factions, right, in Darkwalkers and Allherd and stuff like that, but they felt so optional.
Yes.
They felt like you didn't have to use them. And now there's this move of everybody's complaining like, why don't Gits have sub-faction and all this stuff, and the Skaven don't have sub-factions. I don't want every book to have sub-factions.
Or be forced into sub-factions.
Yes, I don't like that. I don't like that being a necessity. I hate that being a necessity. I want to be able to build my own versions of these things where I get to actually use the command traits and the artifacts and not feel like I'm railroaded into the sub-factions.
Can I defend Gits, though? The reason why Gits want that is because they don't actually have any allegiance rules.
Gits has different... Yeah, I understand that. Gits has a different set of problems. My point is there is a set of problems with Gits. It's not a lack of sub-factions. Okay? Yeah. And, by the by, if you don't have the sub-factions layer of free rules, what we've seen is that the opportunity cost is often not enough of what you're paying off. Yeah. Right? So, like, if as the more we go down this sub-faction road, the more we invite unbalanced battle tomes because you're layering on more stuff. There's been a project that we've been discussing in like a chat, and it's the sort of 100-point project, which I think is going to be coming to Radio Free Hammer Hall at some time soon. So, which Paul has been working on. And when you look at like what 100 points is worth, what you see is that actually scroll-wise, it's incredibly balanced. And where it goes off kilter, right, is when you start layering on the allegiance abilities plus a sub-faction plus a this plus good battalions, right? Plus. When everything hits, when your allegiance abilities are good, and your sub-factions are good, and you've got battalions you want to take, and command abilities you want to use, and spells that you can actually cast that buff well, suddenly that 100-point unit punches like a 300-point unit. Right? Meanwhile, other 100-point units are sitting around going, we don't have access to any of those synergies. So we're just the sucky 100-point unit.
Yep.
Right? So, at any rate, neither here nor there. But I agree with you. Beast of Chaos should have been the template going forward. So, there we are. Okay. But that brings us to 2019. All right. 2019. So, I've just brought up this whole image on the screen. 2019, 12 months, 12 tomes. Gits, Flesh Eater Court, Skaven, Khorne, Fireslayers, Hedonites, Sylvaneth, War Clans, Cities, Bone Reapers, Maw Tribes, Slaves to Darkness. And there is if I just read all those out, some of those probably you went, you like flexed a little, you didn't know why. It was like somebody walked across your grave, pricked you with a little tiny pin. And those pins were Flesh Eater Courts, Skaven, and probably Slaanesh.
Slaanesh, yeah.
Right. I was definitely Slaanesh, by the way. Sorry, I wasn't meaning to minimize them. I was just thinking about the original Fire Slayers, which I don't think was
probably Fire Slayers.
Yeah,
depending on your meta, and then also Slaanesh.
Yes,
and there's a pretty extreme reaction to OBR as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, a lot of these tomes you looked at and you went, super fun tomes. When Gits came out, I was pretty excited. I agree the allegiance abilities are kind of not great because of the nature of the moon. Fine, whatever. Gits has its problems. Khorne was largely fine. I thought the new Khorne book is fine. Sylvaneth we can talk about. Again, I think Sylvaneth is only bad in light of two things. We did a Fixing Sylvaneth show. If you want to see my How to Fix Sylvaneth, we did a whole show on it a couple weeks back. Go watch it. I think we had the best ideas ever, including Phoenix Alariel, which I think is the actual solution for Alariel. Phoenix Alariel is the best idea we've ever had on this show. I don't even think we had it. I think somebody said it in the comments afterward. I don't remember. The point is Phoenix Alariel rules. But War Clans, Cities, Maw Tribes, Slaves, these are great books. Great books. Okay. Now, Doom, this is kind of a period where I think you got some frustration, right? Like, because everybody got to talking about, this is where Broken Tomes hit a new height. Especially when we had Skaven and FEC, Slaanesh and Fire Slayers. These were some dark months, right? Where people were feeling a lot of NPE in their games, if these things were at their table. And it was funny how bifurcated people's experiences became, right?
Yeah.
If you face these armies on the reg, if one of your regular opponents was a Gristlegore, kumquat being shoved down your throat every game, you had a bad time for months. If you didn't have an FEC player, who cared? Your life went on like normal, right? And it didn't even register. Yeah,
well, at this point, I was still rocking tournaments with my Gutbusters, from the GHB, still as deadly as ever. But the thing I want to say is that if you bring up that image that you just had up, there's 15 battle tomes listed there, right?
Yes, that's including there are 15 total because it's including everything since AOS 2.0 into 2019. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm just going to jump ahead, but if you look at those 15, 5 of them are almost completely busted, and 5 of them came out. So you've got 10, okay, no problems. 5 completely busted ones: Skaven, Feck, Fire Slayers, blah blah, Slaanesh, blah blah blah. And this is what drove me insane, is that is too high a strike rate for unbalanced books.
Right.
It's way out. That's way out. That's a ridiculously high proportion of books which are not, and balanced, whatever, you can say whatever about it, but that have an NPE, let's say it that way, or
I think NPE is fine.
And I felt that surely the people that are writing these at this point have enough experience with the actual game to recognize how these rules will translate across on the tabletop. And that was my big frustration, because I always felt, are these people playing the same game that I'm playing? Because when all of this came out, we were like, whoa, what the hell is going on here? Remember the Gristlegore conversations we were having in the chat, and Relian was just straight up like, bam, like, that this was going to be horrible. And it really got to me. And then so that was building up, and then GHB 2019 hit, and I was just like, oh, that's it. I'm going to flip the table.
Right. Right. Because in the middle of all this, we get, as we mentioned earlier, an incredibly underwhelming General's Handbook. Yes, it had great scenarios. We all agree with that. That was a great they did a good job of with all the battle plans. No disagreement there. Okay.
Yeah.
But everything else in that book was so throwaway, right? And then the match play section is what I mean. Like, all the allegiance abilities were junky reprints that did nothing, right? Nothing was fixed as far as what we actually wanted fixed.
Right, because at this point in the meta, you had Skaven, FEC, Fire Slayers, and Slaanesh.
Yeah,
so 4 of those 5 busted books, and it did nothing.
Yeah, and it seemed like you're right, because there was only 12 battle tomes at this point, because the next generation was War Clans and Cities and so forth. Mm-hmm. And what we ended up with is like night and day, because we have Beasts of Chaos, and then we have Fire Slayers, and you're like, how do we compare these? You know, we've got Gloomspite kits, and we've got Slaanesh, and of course, this all led to the idea of different rules writers writing different books and producing different power levels. That was the general sort of trend that a train of thought that came out of this period, and whether that's correct or incorrect, I mean, there's probably a bit of partial truth in it and a lot of hullabaloo, but that's certainly the feeling that evolved out of this period.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, and look, I was a well-known wrong-headed defender of Slaanesh for a long time. Okay, but look, I was blinded by my own bias. I'm willing to admit that. When you love something as much as I do, it's hard to see its flaws. We've all had something we love that much, right? But after time, I came to see just how insane I was. Because as I was playing game after game and watching what was happening to my opponents, I was like, oh yeah, this is terrible. Right? Nobody's enjoying this. I'm
just going to jump out and say, and I was a defender of Fire Slayers. From the standpoint of like, they're not broken in the midst of that meta.
Sure. Well, that's the problem, is that one sin would justify another.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Right? Because, and this was the discussion. It would be like, I'm going to put this image down so we can all see ourselves and talk. But the problem with it is one sin would beget another. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Where you would say, oh, well, this isn't that broken when you compare to blah.
Right.
In a world where FEC can do this is fine.
Right.
Right?
But that's just 3 command points for my first strike.
But that was, of course, completely the wrong-headed opinion. Right? That's like, well, you know, Tom just murdered somebody, so it's okay if I just stab somebody and rob them. That's not as bad. It's not murder. Like, no, those are both wrong.
Yeah. There's also such a heavy introduction of Always Strikes First at this point and Always Strikes Last. Like this was really the full introduction to the activation wars, and I think to an extent that has all settled down and we've come to accept it for what it is, and can play with it now. But at that point, with the disparity between the battle tomes and the introduction of this new mechanic that left just other armies completely for dead if you didn't have it, it was, oh my God, it was frustrating.
Yeah, I think that summer, right, was really like last summer, 2019 summer. Was really the rough time, because when we were full on in the midst of the activation wars, we had a bad GHB come out. We had 4 unbalanced armies just running slipshod, right? Yeah. And it was just, that was a sudden and unexpected, very dark time.
Yeah, but the army I loved was still just as deadly as ever, you know. And you're like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, that was the birth of that meme. Yep. Yes, that time. Yep. Yeah, exactly.
And big shout out to Haywo for making that video, because he's the hero we all need.
He is, in fact, always the hero we need. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think what we saw is by the end of 2019, a lot of this has now been corrected. Not all, but we got new problems introduced, which we can talk about here as we close out, right? Because that'll bring us into current time.
Spelldoms.
Like, yeah, we have new things. The Spelldoms, yes, we'll talk about that in a second. But, you know, Slaanesh got largely corrected. It took a while, but it did get fixed. And I actually like playing Slaanesh again now. It feels probably more like it should have felt originally. It is a very beatable army now. In fact, in the current meta, it's almost dead on arrival, as a matter of fact. But that's not a justification. That's just going back to that same thing we just said, right? Mm-hmm. My point is that it's changes alone, not worrying about the current meta, feel like it actually is much more fair. You fail a lot of locuses, your summoning is much more expensive, the units you're playing with are very fragile. It feels good. It's actually a fun army to play, and I think hopefully it's a better army to play against now. It still plays in some unfun spaces when somebody does get that turn where they nail 3 locuses because they roll like 2 5s and they get the 3 up on their keeper or something.
Yep.
And that turn sucks. Because they basically rolled themselves into an Idneth turn 3 like High Tide, but that's not the average experience.
Right? Yeah, I think all of these armies that were problematic, perhaps with the exception of Fire Slayers because they're able to slide under the radar, have been brought back to a a point where they're still powerful, but they have very bad matchups now and very bad counters. And the rules were toned down to a point where they can no longer deal with those automatic bad matchups. So,
can I jump in real quick, Doom?
Yeah.
The problem with Fire Slayers wasn't at this point. Okay. It was when they got their points adjustment in December.
Yeah.
6 months later, in the middle of this crazy meta, when they like the fix for getting rid of the 30 blocks of Hearthguard was to drop them down to 20 with a
discount.
With a discount. And when that change dropped, I remember I was in the WhatsApp chat and I made a comment. I was like, wow, I love this change. And Ben Johnson was like, I don't know how to respond to this. This is clearly not a good thing if Tom is okay and happy about this change. And in fact, like, I think that with retrospective, like, it's a problem. Like the 480 horde discount of Hearthguard Berserkers is a problem. But there's more fundamental problems with that army. And so by doing that, you're just going to bump them down off of like top tier contention, down to just because like they just don't have the depth of bench that a lot of armies do, Fire Slayers do. And so like there's just not a good solution for them right now. Like there's just not, because
you can rewrite scrolls. I mean, that's what needs to happen.
Yeah, I mean, they're a little bit scenario dependent. That's the thing that keeps them back in some tournaments. But if the player pack stacks up and the scenarios stack up for them, they're a hot favorite all day long. But when
they only have 3 non-hero units.
Yeah, but
everything else is hero.
It's just Hearthguard Berserkers is what it's about.
Right.
But if you look at that run of 12 battle tomes we were discussing, they're probably the only one which hasn't been probably addressed, and they're not as prolific in the meta as well, so they don't present as much of a problem. And so it's a world of difference, 5 out of 12 as opposed to 1 out of 12 problem arms. So we're in such a better place now than what we were at that point. I personally feel.
I agree. I think when we got to the end of 2019, what we saw was the rise of the true fat middle. Like, we lived in the place we wanted to live, right? When you looked at, like, when I was over there with you for CanCon in January, which feels, by the way, Doom, like that was 72 years ago. Yeah. That I was over visiting you. Yeah. I can't even imagine how far away that seems now.
Well, we've been through the apocalypse since then, so
I know.
Wow.
But which was a great time, by the way. As a shout out, if you ever get the chance to go to CanCon, you should go. I'll be back, assuming that I'm allowed to travel from the States and don't have to sit somewhere in a hotel room by myself for 14 days. I'll be back whenever I can. So either 2020 or 2021 for sure. And Doom was amazing, and thank you, buddy, for being so awesome and being a friend at CanCon. It was great. But when I looked around at that hall, what I saw was a lot of great games going on, right? That all felt relatively like, everything was pretty good. The only thing that was kind of a little bit of a canary in the coal mine at that time was Tzeentch, right? Tzeentch hadn't gotten its changes. The book had just come out. Things were clearly a little out of whack. But beyond that, things felt pretty good. We felt like we had a nice fat middle of a game. Like, things were where they should be. And all we needed to do was fix Tzeentch.
I certainly felt pretty good until I got introduced to the true reality of Marauders and a Demon Prince with a Sword of Judgment, rolling 3 6s, 2 turns in a row, and just taking Stonehorns off left, right, and center. Are you kidding me? Damn you. Anyways, it was great. Yeah, it was really, really great.
I remember walking up at the beginning of that game, Doom, and seeing you, and you were like, oh, yeah, this is going to be a fun game. And then I came back just like a little while later, and you had nothing left. And what happened? What happened?
And just before it kicked off, I was like, haha, I've lured him into my trap. This is going to go perfectly. He's about to make a mistake. Nope. It was me that made the mistake. Anyways, yeah.
So that brings us into the modern day. And now we really don't know where we are. Because obviously 2020 has been the year of being on pause. Right? As very quickly after that, we got tomes for a little while. Like, we got more things introduced. But everything shut down, right? So we got our new Kharadron Overlords tome. We got the new Seraphon tome. But then everything came to a halt. And now we're just starting to get back to it, really, with the release of, the Lumineth, sort of, We'll talk about Lumineth next week, by the way, everybody. Next week will be the Lumineth show.
Yeah, okay. It's interesting because I think that it would have been really interesting. Like, I think it would have been a coin flip between like Tzeentch and Fire Slayers or OBR at Adepticon, for example, in March, but we'll never know. Or in Seraphon in there as well, but we'll just never know. And right. So like a lot of that stuff, and so like things are going to get reshuffled next week, or when the new GHB drops. I was initially critical of KO, and I still am. But what I will say is that like they're going to be competitive. Although, like, I don't know that they fix the MPE problem.
Well, I think shooting always just has it. Like, we'll do a whole show sometime on what MPE even means. But
yeah.
By the way, negative play experience for those not who because we're acronyming like crazy and not explaining it.
So, like feel bad game experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Soren said it would be a sin not to talk about the rise of Tabletop Simulator. Sure. I mean, here in lockdown, when everybody was stuck in their homes, we have seen a lot of Tabletop Simulator games, and that's been our best source of knowledge. Right, as to what's off kilter. It has been interesting to watch how fast Tabletop Simulator became a thing that everybody suddenly was playing in and utilizing. But to me, I haven't played a single game on Tabletop Simulator because I have no desire to play on a digital space. For me, this game is models and being with your friends in person and playing the game. That's why I play it.
It's why I went up for 3 days to Vince's house and played 6 games over 3 days.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's what we're here for. Now, that's not. And by the way, again, not yucking your yum. If you're enjoying TTS and having a good time, I think that's fantastic, and I'm super glad that we live in an age where that's an option. I'm just saying it's not for me. Mm-hmm. I think what we're entering now, and Doom, I'll be interested to get your take on this. So we've come to the new term. Depending on what happens in the GHB, I think we're entering the age of the spell DOMs. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're using DOMs, DOMS, like DOMs and subs. Don't Google that if you don't know what I mean by it. If you do, good. Okay.
You're welcome, world. Vince came up with Bone Daddies.
Yes.
And we were looking for a term, and, it's spell DOMs.
It's spell DOMs. When you look at Teclis, Croak, the Nagash, in Petragash or whatever, when you look at arguably still Tzeentch and the capabilities of those things, right? Where you have now so it's what you said before, Doom. When it's one army out of X, it's not as much of a thing. When it's 4 or 5 armies that can produce like overwhelmingly powerful magic, that just makes your like why take a so you're playing ogres. I would do the same thing with my Ironjaws. I'll tell you right now, the world I think we're going into, there's no world where I take like a spellcaster in my Ironjaws army. I wouldn't even bother. It's irrelevant.
So if I'm playing the Stonehorn heavy more tribes, there are certain when you're list building, you can certainly build a wizard in to get that dispel and things like that. But it's wasted points. I don't even bother. Even if I take the strongest casting faction within ogres, which is Blood Gallop, where I get double cast off my wizards and so forth. The spells go off on a 7. I've got no bonuses, and everyone else is already at a bonus to the spell. So there's no point investing in that much at the moment either. So
some of them auto dispelling, some of them table wide dispelling.
Yep. So first I have to get my spell off, and then if I and that's hard enough, and then I've got the dispel, and then they've got the bonuses to the spell as well. So you're better off just put the points straight into more Stonehorns, overloading on that one phase. They're going to overload on magic. You can't. You can't. I was just sorry, I got a phone call. Yeah, you can't build enough into your list to counter that in any way. So just go the opposite way and no wizards at all. And I think that's where we're going to be. We're going to have 5 armies that are just dominating magic. When they play against each other, it might be an interesting interaction, or where they come up against Khorne, for example. But apart from that, we're just going to see everyone drop wizards and go ham. But one thing I just wanted to say about this, because I watched your video you made with Rob on his channel, and talking about where we're going to, what the meta is going to look like when we come out of this this COVID situation, and we have Lumineth and Seraphon and Nagash and all these sort of guys stomping around. And I sort of feel like if we go back to the conversation we just had about last year, with Feck and Skaven and so forth, where it was so bad, right? Because there was so much sort of, but moving forward 6 months, everything's okay. And so I think we just need to, and I would like it to not be this case, but I think sometimes nowadays we need to just take our foot off the pedal a little bit with this game and think to ourselves, right, at the moment, spell doms is going to be crazy and I'm not sure where it's going to be, but in 6 months, I'd probably go to one tournament and then everything is fixed by the next one.
Right.
And so I'm sort of thinking to myself, I think we might have this, the COVID's going to be dealt with. Everyone's going to be back to gaming. We're going to have this terrible situation where there are some really dominant Magic heavy armies again that are pushing the fat middle down, ruining their, just NPE for them. But then I think in a shorter period of time, in the scheme of the game, it is going to get fixed and addressed some way. And I think we'll then be back to a situation where now we've got 30 battle tomes that are playable. And the point being that when you have that many different options, you're not always just getting dominated by Seraphon. You're not always just getting dominated by Teclis. And so I think it's going to be okay. Like I'm not too concerned about where the future is, to be honest with you, as long as I can keep having fun with monsters.
Well, let me push back on that and say that I'm not as hopeful. Right. And just simply from the standpoint of, no, I get to be the negative voice. Simply because I think that what made so much of the last season unfortunate, of those 4 of the 5 books, we were in the age of ASF always or strikes last.
Yeah,
sure. The activation wars.
The activation wars, and we're at the heat of it, and a lot of things around the edges have been chipped at to weaken the activation wars.
Yeah,
and now the problem is that we are going to be in the heart of the Magic insanity.
Yep.
And there's no clear future of chipping away at that. There's no obvious way to move beyond it. Sure. I think KO have some plays against them.
Sure.
I think that there are anti-spell builds in the meta. I don't know that they're going to be able to pull enough weight to podium though.
Well, it is critical as to the type of Magic dominance that we're seeing. So with Croak, with his high mortal wound AoE, for example, now when Tzeentch was back at its prime and they were putting out anywhere from 20 to 30 mortal wounds per turn in their hero phase, right?
Yep.
And that was a devastating amount of mortal wounds. And if you were anything like Stormcast Eternals with an elite army, low model count, low wounds, you were just absolutely toast. But I could run Gutbusters, right? Units of 12 Ogre Bulls just up onto the objectives against Prime Tzeentch and say, come and get me off. And with the exception of Skyfires, but if it was a Magic heavy build, they could do 3 turns of 30 mortal wounds and I've still got 100 wounds left and I'm up in points and I've won already. Right. And so sometimes if the Magic dominance is, say, mortal wound focused only, you can go, okay, well, there is an innate counter to this by just adding more wounds, just absorbing their hero phase with bodies, for example. On the flip side, if it's all just debuffs where it just stops you doing anything, and you get that a little bit in Slaves, but I don't think we've seen it play out to the full extent where it's you can't do anything, you can't do anything, you can't do anything. That's a different challenge altogether. But they don't have.
Lumineth have some of that. Lumineth have a double, every command ability costs double command points. That's a reality. They have multiple half move spells. They have multiple ways to give penalties to him.
We'll see. I don't want to make this the future prediction show, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
What I'll say is there's a lot of questions as to where we are right now, but I'll agree with you. I think where we are is, especially in a week and 3 days from now or whatever it happens to be, whatever the GHB comes out. Yeah. I think a lot of this will be redressed that we're talking about. You mentioned Croak. Croak's an easy fix. You just jack his points way up. Way up. Yep. Way up. Okay, he is way undercosted. He is original Skaven levels of undercosted. Okay.
So you think add another 100, 120 points to him?
Oh, that's my floor of what you add to him. Yes, absolutely. And look, Skaven got fixed by adding points. for the most part, like the only thing we really had to change on the scroll was to break rat trap some. I'd still love to see it broken more or just erased, but for the most part, it was fixed by points. Zinch can largely be fixed by points. Seraphon can largely be fixed by points. Like this is simple tech to fix. And then those spell doms, by the way, don't get to rule the world if they're actually really expensive. Then things are costed out accordingly. If you have to pay too much and make your army too fragile to have magic dominance, then you do get overrun by people who have a whole bunch of bodies. Like Beasts of Chaos are going to run Slipshot over you because they're going to put 200 wounds on the table and just be like, what you going to do when the horde comes for you, buddy?
When the Angor come for you, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, it's just going to be swarming Vestigors, and you're going to be like, your little tiny caster that overcost you is going to get trampled under a sea of gore flesh, right? Yeah. So, like, there's, and that's, I think, a good world to live in. Like, that's how we want the game to be, where it's kind of this soft counter back and forth, where, yeah, you can go into this strat, and you pay accordingly, and you have some risks. This kind of soft balance of rock, paper, scissors.
We want our spell doms, we want to have our shooting doms, we want to have our combat doms, we want to have all our different armies with their own strengths and weaknesses. But if we've got spell doms and we've got combat doms, or even if we've got spell and music doms, that's where the problem, movement, that's when the problem happens, because movement can shut down everything else that happens.
Yeah, when you have sort of one tactic that clearly can win out over everything else. But again, the reason I'm positive is so many of the challenges I see right now floating around are mainly points based, and that's the easiest thing to fix.
Yeah, and you wait till we get our Gargants that come out anyways, and we've just got like 4 models on the table. Guess what? They're immune to magic because of some battle trait or something like that, and we just throw Teclis like ragdoll him like the Hulk to Loki in Avengers. So it'll all be sweet.
Puny God, that's right. When we're picking up objectives and walking away with them, and just leaving combat, which I assume is going to be one of the rules. I would assume one of the rules for giants, especially the big giants, should be if I'm in combat with something that doesn't have the monster keyword, I can just walk away, right? And then I can still do everything else, charge and do anything. I hope
it's you can pick up your enemy's model and throw it across the room.
Like physically pick it up, yeah.
Yeah, just like throw that stupid horse across onto the next table or something like that. Get out of here.
I cannot explain how excited I am for Sons of Behemoth. Let me just say, but totally different conversation. I see nothing but positivity in the future. I am excited for what's coming. Whether it be the rest of the Lumineth, which I think ultimately is a good book. We'll talk about that next week, like I said. And with some spots that need to be addressed, but overall a good book. Whether it's the incredible Sons of Behemoth, getting a whole giant army, literally the culmination of everything I wanted. 5 years ago, one of the first things we saw in one of the earliest books was...
Realm Gate Wars. There was a battalion in Realm Gate Wars.
Correct. Was the Sons of Behemoth battalion, where we got this idea of an all-giant army. It was sort of the concept that was there. And this is what I have had the dream of for the entirety of AOS, and I can think of no better way to celebrate 5 years of AOS than to know that truly the army that I've always wanted, always, forever, this has been my dream, is finally coming to pass. It's incredible.
Yeah. And I think we've got so many more amazing armies to come, which are just going to blow our minds. And then we still have the every time a book like Slaves to Darkness comes out, it adds so many more options to Blades of Khorne, to Zench, to Beasts of Chaos. So sometimes the release of one army just refreshes 5 different books. And I've never been spoilt for choice like as much as what I am now. And I don't even need to buy new armies. I've got 3 here that are interchangeable, and I can just go back and add bits, and it becomes a completely different army. So I think, despite some of our frustrations sometimes, it's in a really great place, and it's really great. Like it's all coming up Millhouse.
Totally agree. All right, well, gentlemen, that's 5 years of AOS. There we go. So with that, let's call it a night, shall we? And hope for 5 more years of great AOS. We'll have Doom back before 10 years from now, or 4 or 5 years from now, before the 10-year anniversary show, of course. But Doom, buddy, thank you as always, man. Been a great time.
No, thanks for having me, and I'll see you in 5 more years.
For all of you out there watching, thank you so much, everybody. We really do appreciate it. We hope you're with us for the next 5 years to come. But one thing you can do right now to make sure that more people find us for the next 5 years is you can move your mouse over just like that much on the screen and click that little like button. See how easy it is? Hitting like is one of the nicest things you can do. It helps other people find the channel and costs you nothing other than 1 second of your time. So please hit like. But with that, I'll say thank you very much, everybody. We really appreciate it. And as always, we'll see you next Wednesday.